Chapter 1063. The judge spoke, and the lawyers returned to their seats. The people sitting below were all observers. Rao Rong stood there nonchalantly. But sometimes, even during the trial, the criminal might not admit to the crime. For example, Wang Chuanlei, before the trial, he would think of a way to escape. Everyone involved in the case knew what was going on. Wang Chuanlei probably thought he could do it again based on his past experience. His lawyer had also prepared a lot of materials, but these materials were basically useless. After the trial, the lawyer avoided the main point when he was asked about the reply to the text. At most, it can only be said to be a leak. Without confirming the other party's identity, the crime can't be established. Besides, I doubt the other party's evidence collection is legitimate. Director Huang had expected such a defense. Over the years, there were too many people who were used to quibbling. The judge discussed with the people beside him before replying, "The crime squad doesn't have any other evidence." "Yes." Rao Rong walked over, his gaze landing on Wang Chuanlei. A year ago, Wang Chuanlei won the honor of killing someone and used this honor to rise through the ranks. "I can provide all the evidence." Ever since he had seen Rao Rong, Wang Chuanlei's expression had changed. He had indeed wanted to be wary of Rao Rong, but in his heart, he didn't think Rao Rong would amount to anything. Even if Rao Rong had something, it wouldn't be a threat to him. After all, he hadn't had the chance to show the evidence back then. Some people were still protecting him and they didn't believe in the evidence. Wang Chuanlei didn't know that it was because of his lowly life. Rao Rong was no longer the hot-blooded youngster who believed in everyone. Now, he had stepped forward, all for the sake of getting justice back. This time, no one would be able to stop him. As they exchanged glances, Wang Chuanlei seemed to understand something. The hatred in Rao Rong's eyes made him lose his composure. The judge ordered for the evidence to be presented. Rao Rong's current situation was unique. Almost everyone knew that his father had been framed due to the previous exposure. It was just that there was no way to confirm who the person behind this was. "We need to verify the evidence." That was because there wasn't any personal grudge involved. Even if everyone knew what was going on, they had to have enough evidence before they could be sentenced. The verification of evidence had to be done according to procedures. No one knew what would happen during this period of time. Just as the judge was about to announce that the case would be adjourned for a retrial tomorrow. "There's other evidence." Suddenly, a clear and distinct voice came from the door. It was a young man wearing a dark red t-shirt and matching earrings with shimmering black fragments. His handsome face was exposed to everyone's sight. Rao Rong's eyes widened when he saw the slight curve of his lips and the way he strode over with one hand on his belt. "Bojo." She sat up from the bed with a white bandage wrapped around her head. She looked like a beautiful, sickly man. Chapter 1064. It was just 5 words. Wang Chuanlei almost lost his footing. Everything else was fine. Other than Rao Rongqing, who else could prove that he hadn't killed anyone? When checking the evidence, he could take this time to clean up the loose ends. But drug trafficking. Everyone knew what this meant. Director Huang was undoubtedly the most excited among them. He turned around and looked at the tall man on his left. "I have to say, even though you two are quite annoying, you're still so useful at the crucial moment." Chi Nemo didn't speak, just glancing at him. On the other hand, Lawyer Bai pushed his spectacles up and walked down the stairs. He probably knew that the high school student who hired him would appear. However, he didn't expect it to be like this. His head was broken. Bojo noticed Lawyer Bai's gaze. How should she put it? There wasn't anything wrong with her head, she just had a slight concussion. She wanted to come out, but the Almighty was worried and personally wrapped a white bandage around her. At that time, the Almighty looked at her as if he was looking at a naughty child and even told her to sit still. What else could she say? As a domineering CEO, she had to give in to her little secretary, even if she had to go out to work. But she also protested, "It's just a concussion, there's no need to make it so eye-catching, right? Didn't the novels you read tell you that sometimes a concussion can cause amnesia? If the Almighty didn't have a sharp tongue, he wouldn't be the Almighty." The fact that he liked to dig up her dark history probably couldn't be changed. Now that she thought about it, she wanted to reply, "You're the one who lost your memory, not me." Lawyer Bai followed the young man's gaze and roughly understood what was going on. His lips curled into a smile as he walked towards the judge. "Since the beginning, the other party has been denying the evidence we have provided, but he has never said why he leaked the secret. Having such a loophole in a confidential meeting is itself a dereliction of duty. Moreover, more and more evidence shows that he not only leaked the secret, but also committed murder and drug trafficking. We will file a lawsuit. Please sentence him to death in accordance with the law." When the word death sentence came out of Lawyer Bai's mouth, Wang Chuanlei's legs gave way, and his face turned extremely pale. More importantly, every piece of evidence presented by the USB drive pointed to the truth. Wang Chuanlei couldn't escape. Rao Rong's tightly clenched fists finally loosened after the judge's verdict. But at this moment. However, the other party's lawyer retorted and pointed out a point. "Regardless of whether your father is a hero or not, no matter how wronged he is, you've joined a criminal organization. Even if you haven't committed any atrocities, Rao Rong should still be imprisoned." Hearing this, Bo Jiu tightened her grip. Lawyer Bai wanted to say something. Rao Rong removed his jacket, stretching his arms out. He was wearing a white shirt, his back straight. He did not say a word. However, she had tacitly agreed to the suggestion of sending him to prison. Director Huang wanted to step forward. Qin Mo reached out to block him. Rao Rong lifted his lids, glancing at the handcuffs on his wrists. Suddenly, he broke into a smile, clean and gentle, just like the youngster who had led a strong esports team, waved the mouse and won the honor. "I don't regret it. When I come out again, Qin Mo, I will be as innocent as you." He had chosen this method to avenge his father's death. Chapter 1065. In this world, there was no turning back. Perhaps at the very beginning. If the people who had protected Wang Chuanlei had been able to distinguish right from wrong, they wouldn't have forced Rao Rong to choose such a method of farewell. But there was no maybe. It's all over, he thought. He could finally have a good sleep. Let go of the hatred and sleep. They brushed past each other. Rao Rong paused beside the youngster's feet, speaking in a voice only the two of them could hear. "Thank you, Z. It wasn't Spade Z. It was Z." The intelligent Bo Jiu quickly realized that he had found out about her identity. After all, it was possible that the mission Fan Jia had given Rao Rong was to infiltrate the esports industry and target her. Rao Rong must have noticed something during their interaction. Bo Jiu didn't reply, she didn't admit or deny it. Rao Rong smiled. "There's another case. Let me know the outcome once it's over." Perhaps, only those who had experienced it would understand empathy. Rao Rong paid attention to that case. It was because he knew that there was a group of people who couldn't tell right from wrong that were protecting a criminal. He knew that someone would become the second him. He knew very well what it was like to feel that way. The evidence was in his hands, but there was no way to sue heaven. He was young and could handle it. How could that mother endure such heart-wrenching pain? Bo Jiu glanced up. Just as he was about to disappear, she said, "Don't worry." "Okay," clang. The metal door slammed shut. They glanced at each other. Without hesitation, they walked to the next door. Lawyer Bai was with them so they could speak. This case was difficult because the system wasn't perfect. Fortunately, there was enough evidence. But even so, the opposing party's lawyers still asked a very shameless question on the spot, before saying that someone else stole it. Can the original author guarantee that he didn't steal it? After all, there are many works of the same genre. It's not valid to say that the author plagiarized the work. That's right, it doesn't make sense. So what if my almighty plagiarized it? It's better than the original author. I like his writing. You sure are troublesome. You just won't let go of almighty Wu Men. You're bullying my almighty. Probably for money. When the judge heard this, he frowned and looked at the mother. The lawyer took advantage of these voices. Also, my client wasn't as popular as the other party in the beginning. Is the other party trying to use his popularity to bully my client? Bojo knew that no matter how uncultured her mother was, she could still understand what others were saying and understood the situation. When she looked up, her eyes met the man's lips, which were about to break. Bojo stuffed a hand into her pocket. Suddenly, she picked up the mop beside her and swung it towards the handle of the row of seats. The girls who were still talking froze. Bojo waved her left hand and knocked on it. There wasn't a hint of a smile in her eyes. Continue, I'm listening. Director Huang had tagged along. When he saw this scene, he shot Qin Mo a look. It seemed to be saying, don't go too far with the person you're in charge of. This is a court. What if someone catches you? But reality proved that Bojo had a sense of propriety, her voice rising once more. Lawyer Bai, explain to them in detail what plagiarism is. Chapter 1066. Plagiarism is the act of stealing or modifying someone else's work, using the same method to copy the work completely or partially, or altering the form or content to a certain extent. Lawyer Bai walked forward. Firstly, the other party's defense is intentionally distorting the main body of the argument, using plagiarism as a joke. Under normal circumstances, plagiarism isn't determined based on the subject matter. There are many similar books like fantasy, CEO, level up, esports, entertainment, etc. There might even be similarities due to the description, which is normal. But what isn't normal is when there is a plot unique to the original author. The other party's action is to use the original plot or add words to make it their own. This isn't a joke, it's a copy. Lawyer Bai spoke slowly, reading the sentence clearly. Also, the most important aspect of a work is the soul of the character, which is what we call the main character. It's simple, take the rebirth as an example. There isn't anything wrong with writing about a high school student, but our main character wears earrings, skateboards, likes to climb walls, and gets beaten up for being a gay. There are a bunch of overbearing CEO books on the bookshelf, which the main character uses as a black mark. This is an original plot, but why is it the same for your side? There are also other major plots that are copied and written in the hands of Your Excellency. Lawyer Bai paused for a moment before continuing. As for what you said about plagiarizing or not, it's your business if you don't care. After all, not everyone has a conscience. My point of view is that we can forgive unintentional mistakes, but we will never forgive those who plagiarize and then accuse the original. There's no point in pretending to be weak. What matters here is the truth, not acting. Sometimes, having a good voice was a good thing. Besides, every lawyer would clearly convey the message they wanted to convey. Some of them weren't convinced and wanted to speak up. The judge looked at the evidence, comparing it against every frame. Bojo stood at the side of the loudest, reminding Lawyer Bai, you forgot the most important point. Lawyer Bai followed the young man's gaze, his gaze landing on the mother who was forcing herself to stand up straight. According to our country's constitution, compensation is the rightful amount of compensation. Perhaps you've never heard of it, but during the trial, my guardian mentioned the amount of compensation, 1 renminbi. A beggar wouldn't even ask for such a small amount of money. After traveling for 36 days, from the county to the provincial city, from the provincial city to here, I've put in so much effort. From start to end, all I want is justice. Of course, even if my guardian succeeds, you'll still say that you like both books and don't care how it came about. But remember, you'll always be an accomplice. Even Director Huang was stunned by what he heard. He turned towards Bojo. I've finally witnessed the power of words. It's expensive after all. Bojo glanced at the time on her phone. Lawyer Bai really charged by the second, but the money spent was worth it since it would be able to control the situation. As Lawyer Bai's closing argument, he had said everything he needed to say. The three judges glanced at each other. Chapter 1067. These 5 minutes weren't peaceful at all. It wasn't easy to get a fair treatment for such a case in China. Besides, there were so many people protecting the other party. The funniest thing was that the defendant didn't even attend the hearing, only her representative appeared. This meant that all the pressure from the public was on the mother. She seemed especially calm at this moment. After 5 minutes, the hearing resumed. Her hands weren't as tense as before. She stood there innocently, waiting for an answer. The judge announced, the defendant is guilty of plagiarism. The mother didn't laugh, instead, she reached out to cover her mouth. She wanted to cry, but she suppressed her emotions. She looked at her bracelet. Daughter, did you hear that? Everything that should be returned to you has been returned to you. There would still be people who wouldn't accept the verdict and would complain. But at this moment, it didn't seem to matter. Perhaps, those who couldn't tell right from wrong would never understand that they weren't being kind, they were being cruel. But that wasn't important anymore. Bojo watched as the mother's shoulders trembled and she started to cry uncontrollably. She stood there, not leaving. She placed the mop in her hands back to its original position. She didn't even bother to look at them. The entire case was announced in the newspaper. Although the details weren't revealed, the outcome was clear. Bojo stood outside for a while. She wanted to smoke. But when she reached into her pocket, she realized that she had promised the Almighty to quit smoking. She removed the candy wrapper and placed it in her mouth. The matter here was settled. It was time to plan in detail how she was going to kidnap the Almighty. Chi Nemo had expected to see a cold and listless fox. After all, the youngster's expression had started to show some emotions. He didn't expect to see the youngster rubbing his palms together when he turned around to see the youngster rubbing his fists in anticipation after telling him how to deal with the aftermath. What are you up to again? Chi Nemo walked over, pulling her towards him as he glanced at her head. Bojo felt that she didn't look good with such a curse on her. But she didn't want to lie, so she decided to compromise. I'm thinking about the filming in America, I wonder how long it will take. You can ask about the schedule. Chi Nemo touched the bandage on the youngster's head and casually changed the topic. Let's go back to sleep. Bojo had slept for a long time and was still energetic. I just woke up. Do you want to play ball? I'm sleepy. Chi Nemo held her hand and walked forward as though there was no one else around. The two of them were still as compatible as ever. Bojo enjoyed watching the Almighty sleep. Who wouldn't like to watch him sleep? Besides, the Almighty was so domineering that he could only fall asleep hugging her as a pillow. He wouldn't allow her to run around. At noon, Bojo closed her eyes along with the Almighty. Later on, she also wanted to be more honest. As a result, the princess was always walking back and forth in front of her like a cat, snorting from time to time. Bojo suppressed the provocation with her brute force and pulled Princess out. It was commonly known as catwalking. Dusk was approaching. Many people in the courtyard were walking their dogs. Walking the cat. The princess' big flat cat face exploded. Chapter 1068. Bo Jiu was slightly surprised when she received Lin Fang's call. "Senior, what's wrong? There's something that I need to discuss with you." For some reason, Lin Fang's tone sounded very different from other times. Bo Jiu's fingers stilled. She held on to Princess, her voice calm. "Speak. In less than half a month, Yunhu will be leaving the country. He's talking to Feng Yi now. I think he's leaving the team." Lin Feng took a puff of his cigarette. Bo Jiu wasn't sure where he was now. Actually, when Lin Feng had heard the news, he had wanted to discuss something with Feng Yi. He hadn't expected the office door to be left open, allowing him to hear everything. He has quite a number of fans. If he leaves the team just like that, there will definitely be a lot of people who won't understand. Lin Feng leaned against the wall, looking at his fingers. Even if they understand, no one will be able to accept it. Rather than letting the media spread the news, why don't we tell everyone? Bo Jiu paused, returning to the previous question. Leaving the team. That's right, after he goes overseas, he definitely won't be able to undergo the same intensive training as before. Besides, he has always wanted to do research. Lin Feng's voice was calm. "I was the one who pulled him into the esports team." Bo Jiu could sense Lin Feng's bad mood. She carried Princess up with one hand and poked him casually, the other holding onto her phone. "How do you intend to tell everyone?" As a cat of noble birth, Princess's big face was obviously helpless. His claws couldn't reach the youngster, everything was useless. Lin Feng smiled. "We can hold a farewell party and invite his fans. You can dress as a girl." Bo Jiu took a moment before giving a direct answer. Even though Lin Feng was feeling down, he couldn't bring himself to feel depressed. The corners of his mouth twitched. F***ck, don't we still have the Asian Cup? It's less than a month, isn't it? In her heart, Supreme Alliance wouldn't be Supreme Alliance without anyone. Lin Feng tossed the cigarette into the bin and straightened his back. Feng Yi has discussed this with the organizers. With Supreme Alliance's current power, they aren't able to defend against external enemies. The Asian Cup concerns China's reputation and captain's condition is unknown. With Yunhu's withdrawal, we won't be able to win against the other Asian teams, much less the Japanese. Hence, he suggested for Xiangnan to participate in the Asian Cup. The organizers have already given a reply. Both teams are to prepare and we will see which team is stronger. He was already prepared to not participate in the competition. Bo Jiu had an idea. At the same time, she understood that it wasn't appropriate for Supreme Alliance to continue fighting. Just as Lin Feng had said, Supreme Alliance had two generals that couldn't participate. The Asian Cup wasn't a domestic competition. Under such circumstances, sending Xiangnan out was the wisest choice. Feng Yi wouldn't have made this decision on his own. He must have asked the Almighty. Bo Jiu lowered her lids. Every player's greatest wish was to fight for their country. It was just that everyone knew that the National League was probably the last battle. After this, no one knew how long it would take for Supreme Alliance to rise again. Chapter 1069. Yes, even if he had to leave openly. Rather than letting others speculate about him in the future, it would be better to bid farewell to everyone. "I still have 3 days left. 3 days later, Brother Mo and I will head overseas to treat his hand." Bo Jiu had always been a person of action. "Let's think about how to organize the farewell party." Lin Feng blew his hair. "That's simple, we can perform something." "Piano," Bo Jiu suggested. Lin Feng arched a brow. "Little Spade, let's do something normal." "Piano isn't normal." Bo Jiu couldn't understand Senior Lin Feng's thoughts. Lin Feng replied, "The venue will be cold, don't forget, there will be fans." "Oh right, how do we contact the fans?" Bo Jiu asked. At this point, Lin Feng had an idea that he hadn't realized. "Why don't we look for a fan meeting? Your official fan club president and my fan club president will be together. Then, we'll ask Captain and Yunhu out. It would be better to discuss with them during this farewell meeting." Indeed. They had to be mentally prepared to leave the team. Lin Feng, on the other hand, wasn't naive. "After you hang up, use your Weibo to contact your people." "My Weibo is fake." Bo Jiu pulled Princess back. Lin Feng spoke in a Beijing accent. "You don't have to worry about that. Other fans might mistake you for someone else, but your official fan club leader wouldn't mistake you for someone else. When are you free today? Find a chance to meet her. We're only inviting local fans this time, so there won't be a lot of them. As for the program, aren't you the school hunk?" Bo Jiu replied faintly. "Even if you want to sing, we have to sing together." "Me? You want me to sing?" Lin Feng wasn't bothered. "If you have the courage to listen, I have the courage to sing." Bo Jiu was still inexperienced and didn't understand that some people were so good at singing that they couldn't be taught. When she realized the problem, it was already too late. The more Lin Feng spoke, the more excited he became. "Speaking of which, this is my first time meeting someone." As someone with experience, Bo Jiu replied calmly, "It's nothing, Brother Mo, and I only got to know each other after we met. How can I be compared to you? I have the burden of being an idol. I'll go and contact someone first. Come out at 5:00. Is there a problem?" Lin Feng put away his bad mood. Bo Jiu thought for a moment. She glanced up and scanned the walls of the Qin family's house. It wasn't easy for her to climb in, but no one would care if she climbed out. "Sure. That's settled then. Where shall we meet?" He had to tell them the location of the meeting, 5 p.m. Bo Jiu took a moment. You don't have to queue at that time. The atmosphere wouldn't be awkward if they talked while eating. In some ways, she was really witty. But there was one thing. Contacting fans on Weibo had to be low-key. According to Lin Feng's intentions, he didn't want everyone to know first. With that in mind, she decided to walk the cat for another round and use this time to contact someone. Princess's heart was really tired. With a big round face, she was resolutely staring at a Samyed. "Meow, why are they all taller than me?" The old men who were walking their dogs also thought it was interesting that the young man was walking with the cat in the yard. Chapter 1070. At this moment, Bo Jiu noticed the gazes of the old men. She decided to keep a low profile. She carried Princess and sat on the steps. "Brother, let's discuss something." "Who's your brother? Aren't you embarrassed to call me brother? Where's your bottom line?" "Meow. I can't accept it." Princess raised his big face and paced back and forth. He felt that walking in circles wasn't bad. All the tall men left in fear when they saw him. Not bad, not bad. Bo Jiu couldn't understand why a cat would be so proud. She watched as he challenged Samyed valiantly with his claws extended. Samyed didn't even look at him. He ignored him and lowered his head to sniff the bushes. Helpless, the princess even turned her head around and raised her face high. She looked as if she had been scared away by this young master. Bo Jiu felt that it was better to go through Weibo. After all, it was tiring to watch a cat's inner drama. Bo Jiu logged into her account and password. Due to the overwhelming number of messages, her phone was stuck. Fortunately, the official fan account was easy to find. She just didn't know if the person on Weibo was there at this time. After all, she couldn't use WeChat all the time. Bojo moved her fingers and sent a question mark over. She thought she would have to wait for a while. Unexpectedly, there was an instant reply. It's a living adult. Since it's so lively, it shouldn't be a tortoise, Bojo replied. The person on the other end was obviously agitated. Sir, I'm her secretary. The general manager is out. Tell her to meet me at 5 in the afternoon at Huda. The other presidents of the fan club will be there too. If she isn't free, she can leave me a message. Bojo sucked on a lollipop. After she was done typing, she leaned back with one arm and sat lazily. She freed one hand and caressed Princess's chin. Brother, come, let's continue our conversation. Help me set up a cover at 5:00. Princess wouldn't agree to it. He started his inner drama again. Her Weibo chimed. Bojo retracted her hand. There were only 3 words. I'll be there. Okay. After she was done, Bojo stood up, stuffing a hand into her pocket. Before she entered, she didn't forget to size up the walls and balcony. The princess narrowed her eyes and extended her claws again. What do you want? Why are you so interested in my nest? The princess nests on the balcony. Bojo lowered her lids and headed up to the second floor alone. The Almighty was still asleep. Soft light shone in, creating a halo of light. His messy black hair only made him look more elegant and noble. That was all the beauty in the world could do. Bojo walked over and found a spot that belonged to her. She turned sideways and wanted to lie down. At this moment, his wrist was suddenly grabbed by someone. Even his head was pressed against his chest, filled with the scent of peppermint and sandalwood. I heard from the guys in the military that you're a good catwalker. Bojo's gaze shifted, landing on the blinking phone screen. I didn't expect Brother Mo to have such a wide circle of friends. We're from the same compound, it's only natural that we know each other. Chin Mo didn't open his eyes. He was probably still sleepy. But at this moment, his voice was hoarse and deep. He told me that your little friend is very interesting. He's walking the cat behind us. He's an old general. Chapter 1071. Chin Mo didn't receive a reply. When he opened his eyes, he saw the youngster's slightly depressed expression. It was a pretty face. Why? Can't you treat me as a little kid? Chin Mo asked as he touched her head, probably to check if the bandage was still there. Bojo had forgotten about it. She would have to remove the bandage before heading out. It's sad to be treated as a kid even though you're already an adult. I thought the main point of my sentence was my home. With that, he closed his eyes. Sleep for a while more. My home. Bojo suppressed the urge to kiss him. She listened to the Almighty's heartbeat and replied, sleep. Chin Mo really needed to rest. That was why he went back to sleep after that. Bojo waited for almost half an hour before standing up. The Almighty had indeed been watching her. It wasn't an illusion. The people outside the Chin family's house seemed to be following her wherever she went. But it wasn't impossible for her to shake them off. It was a good opportunity to spar with them and test their skills. It would be easy to kidnap the Almighty. Bojo pondered as she walked into the bathroom. It was 2:30 p.m. The courtyard was quite a distance from Hu University. No matter what, he had to change his clothes. This was a sign of respect for gay activities. But after searching for half a day, she could only wear a dark red t-shirt. She added a thin hooded jacket. The jacket wasn't really meant to be worn. She wore a black watch band on her fair wrist, its surface reflecting light as she moved. She bit the pen cap and wrote a note to the Almighty, stating the reason. Once everything was arranged, she went downstairs. There were people at the 9:00 and 6:00 directions. Bojo arched a brow. She walked to the wall and placed Princess under the shade. She smiled and escaped. The jacket was held up by the tree branches. From other directions, only the corner of the jacket could be seen. It seemed as though Bojo was squatting and playing with the cat. In reality, the youngster had already kicked with her long legs. Using the force, she reached out and leaped onto the wall handsomely, landing swiftly and cleanly. The dark red t-shirt matched with the youngster's bright smile. It was both handsome and devilish. However, it was a little awkward. When she looked up, she saw the two old men looking at her and shaking their heads. The little kid that Chin-mo brought back is mischievous again. It's normal for children to climb over walls. Those eyes were filled with love. Bojo coughed and was about to speak. Little friend, go ahead. There are so many people looking at you. I don't know what that cold brat is thinking. Just don't go and not come back. I'll be back once I'm done. Thank you, grandpas. He waved his hand, implying that he did not mind. After that, the two old men continued to focus their attention on the chessboard. They were indeed like generals. The first thing Bojo did when she left the courtyard was to contact Lin Feng. How is it? I'm already here, why aren't you here yet? Lin Feng's voice was lazy. Hurry up, it's hot outside. Bojo didn't understand. If it's hot, enter the shop first. Not entering. Lin Feng was still a little awkward. It's my first time meeting a gay man, and it's all girls there. It'll be so awkward if I go to the table. When you come, we can go in together. Bojo. Why are you looking for a girlfriend when you're so shy? You should just stick with Almighty Yun. Chapter 1072. Lin Feng, who was walking in and out of Huda, was dressed to the nines. He was wearing a mask and a hat, and the only thing that could be seen was his eyes. Those who didn't know better would think that he was using a secret signal to communicate with others. But he had to. Supreme Alliance was at its peak right now. Popular players like Bojo, Lin Feng, and Yun who were easily recognized when they went out. But when he saw Bojo, Lin Feng felt depressed. Why did he look like a lunatic when he dressed up? She was wearing a black mask and a dark red t-shirt, which made her look even more handsome. She was completely different from him. Let's go in, Bojo said, pushing the door open. At this point, Lin Feng felt that he had lost again. He tidied up his appearance and strode in as well. The base meeting was on the same day. The people invited were all the president of the fan club. In reality, there weren't many people. But there was one girl who took the high-speed train from Lin City. They were really excited since they had never met their almighty in such a manner. Just as the girls were having a friendly conversation, one of them glanced up and caught sight of the youngster walking over. The youngster was wearing a black mask and a matching earring, which made his eyes seem deep. He was still holding his phone in his hand, and he looked natural and handsome as he walked over. After seeing his silver-gray hair, the girls were already a little stunned by his handsomeness. Bojo was carefree, sitting down when she saw a seat. She reached out and flipped the menu. Everyone is here, what do you want to eat? They were surprised that they had entered the ordering phase so quickly. The girls felt as though they were still in a dream. But the person in front of them was indeed Big Spade. Almighty Lin isn't here yet, one of the girls said softly. Bojo reached out and removed the black mask. She supported the side of her face with one hand and tilted her head, smiling. He's here but he needs to prepare himself mentally. The girl was originally the president of Uncle Yin's fan club. When she saw the youngster's smile, she froze. All the girls felt that Big Spade's face was too lethal after removing his mask. He was so handsome that they couldn't concentrate. In addition, everyone was very excited at this time. They couldn't suppress the smiles on their faces, and their hearts were beating faster. Lin Feng felt the same way. After all, he had never met his fans in this way before. But they still had to meet. Therefore, Lin Feng, who pretended to be cool, followed closely behind. Only then did everyone arrive. Bo Jiu started ordering. Since the girls weren't looking at the menu anymore, they were all staring at the two of them. When they got excited, they would grab the hands of the people around them. They were all here to see their almighty. Now that their wishes had come true, of course they were happy. The dishes Bo Jiu ordered were all meat, but since there was a girl around, she ordered 2 more plates of vegetables and a fruit salad. The girls couldn't control their wildly beating hearts. Someone asked Bo Jiu, "Can Big Spade take a photo?" Bo Jiu glanced over but didn't reply. That person immediately explained. His voice was filled with unconcealable joy. "We won't take pictures of our faces. We'll just take pictures of our hands together to tell everyone that we're meeting up." Chapter 1073. Sure. Lin Feng placed his hand on her shoulder. He was rather forthright now. Bo Jiu didn't object, smiling faintly as she nodded. The person in charge of taking photos used a selfie stick. After raising the mobile phone, everyone stretched out 2 fingers and put them together. After piecing them together, it was a very tall and beautiful picture. That person took a glance, thinking that Big Spade's hands, with the black ring, would definitely go crazy if it was released. That was the truth. Initially, the person had uploaded the photo with the intention of showing off the delicacies. Who would have known that every fan club president would have such a change? After adding one, the photo went viral immediately. Gay meetup. Who is it? I heard it's with Big Spade and Almighty Lin. It's a pity I'm not from here, it's too far. Ah, gay meetup. There were some who reacted slowly. After seeing the photo, they started to search for clues. Big Spade and Almighty Lin are among them. Look at the hands, don't you think 2 of the fingers are too outstanding? It was indeed outstanding, the black ring was eye-catching. If this isn't my Big Spade's hand, I'll swallow my keyboard. Oh, I'm going crazy, I'm so envious of the people who can attend the meetup. I heard from my good friend, they're eating now, they'll be going to KTV later. I wanted to block out her moments but now I can't wait to understand the entire process, it would be nice to listen to the live broadcast. The official fan clubs at S and comments never stopped. On this day, everyone was restless. The girls who came to attend the meetup were even more excited until Lin Feng mentioned the farewell party. The atmosphere suddenly fell into a stillness. It was as though a party had just ended and everyone was still yearning for more. Then, it was announced that everything had ended and there wouldn't be a next time. Perhaps it was even heavier than that. Because everyone knew in their hearts. Regardless of who was missing, Supreme Alliance would never be the same again. Besides, it was Yunhu who was leaving. Other than Yunhu, Almighty Qin would be heading overseas to recuperate and Spade would be following him. Which meant that Supreme Alliance would lose 3 members. They would be torn apart. That was everyone's first thought. It wasn't a good feeling. Especially for them, esports fans. Some of the fan leaders were already very old. When they liked Supreme Alliance, they hadn't dated yet. That was when they were still in university. It was the first time they understood the world. No matter what, as long as you worked hard, you could change the outcome. When they first met Supreme Alliance, it was at its peak. At that time, Almighty Qin held a gun and entered the territory alone. No one dared to get close to him. At that time, Linda and Yundo were still rookies with strong personalities. Although his playstyle wasn't that skillful, it gave people unlimited expectations. Later on, Supreme Alliance hit a low point, but it had never been so miserable. If there was anything that was the most unbearable, that was their helplessness at that time. However, it was still this group of people who had leapt up step by step from the lowest point. They were the true kings who had returned, their sharpness unstoppable. Just when they thought that they could continue to accompany them like this, everything was over. They knew very well that the lifespan of esports players wasn't too long. After all, hand speed and age mattered. Chapter 1074. When is Almighty Yun leaving? After a long while, someone asked. Lin Feng had expected such an atmosphere, but now that it was like this, he felt even worse. Half a month later. If he doesn't report, it will affect him too. Brother Mo and I will be flying in 3 days. Bo Jiu placed the cola in her hand down. I wanted to ask how many locals or nearby people you can gather for the next 2 days so that everyone can come over to play and bid farewell. No one spoke. The lively atmosphere wouldn't come back. The president of the Feng Yun fan club tilted her head, her voice hoarse. I'll try my best. The person beside her patted her shoulder. At this moment, everyone felt the same. But at the same time, they understood that if you really liked someone, you should let him live his life according to his wishes. You shouldn't use your liking to make him stay. After the discussion was over, the end of the base meetup was brought forward. Under such circumstances, no one seemed to be in the mood to get high. The one who felt the worst was the president who had followed Yunhu all the way. When she boarded the train, she didn't know why but her throat felt uncomfortable. Actually, everyone knew. This might be the last time they would see their idol. It wasn't in real life. But in the future, there wouldn't be a shadow of that person in every competition. Even Supreme Alliance would gradually disappear from everyone's sight. If you had really liked a person or a group of people, you would understand how it felt. Hence, the painstaking organization sent a message to everyone who was here. They even said that they wanted everyone to come. They couldn't tell them the reason. But they knew that if they didn't come this time, it would be a lifelong regret. After Lin Feng and Bo Jiu sent them to the car, they found a place and lit up a cigarette. *CK, I felt terrible when I saw her like that. Lin Feng caressed his hair, leaning against the wall, his eyes looking up at the sky. It would be great if I could play games for the rest of my life. But people have to grow up, right? For example, when you were young, you realized that this person was the most suitable person for you. When you come into contact with more outstanding people, you will realize that there is actually someone more suitable for you. Bo Jiu tilted her head and paused. She threw the cigarette into the bin and wore her mask. She stuffed one hand into her pocket. No, it's because of that person. That person has appeared before. No matter how outstanding the people I will meet in the future, they won't be able to compare to him. That's right. She paused for a moment before continuing. What happened between you and Almighty Yun? Ah. Lin Feng lowered his eyes and took 2 puffs of his cigarette. He smiled and said, what can happen between us? It's just that my best friend suddenly left the country. I'm not used to it. Bo Jiu wanted to see Lin Feng's expression, but all she could see was his handsome face, which was covered by his hair. She couldn't see anything. However, he vaguely felt that something was different. It was hard to describe. Chapter 1075. When Coco received the call, he was still in the midst of a live stream. When he heard the news, he switched off the channel. What did you say? Lin Feng is going to sing. He bit the bunny's ear. I don't want to participate, I strongly reject. Rejection is invalid, it's a group activity. We'll be near the club at midnight, come over with Feng Shang. Even though that was what Bojiu said, she was still a little doubtful after the call ended. She glanced at Lin Feng. How bad is your singing for Coco to reject you? Lin Feng held her arm. Let me tell you, it's a long story. You'll see how good I am in a while. Bojiu. Was singing badly a form of pride now? When they reached the KTV, Bojiu realized that it wasn't because of his singing. Every line Lin Feng sang wasn't in tune. He should have been in tune, but for some reason, he went up, making it difficult for Coco to find the tune again. Bojiu finally understood what it meant to be in tune. To a listener, it was a form of destruction. How could he perform for the fans with such a standard? Bojiu reached out and rubbed her temples. She thought for a moment and stopped playing the guitar. This won't do. Lin Feng arched a brow. Why do I find it nice? Look at what I sang just now, there's finally a tune. There are so many lines, but you only managed to tune one line. Bojiu brought the guitar over with a smile. How did you do it? Lin Feng didn't speak. He had a feeling that if he spoke another word, Little Spade would smack him with his guitar. Coco placed his earplugs down and jumped over with the bunny in his arms. He was exhilarated. What did I say, Little Spade, you can't let this guy sing, there are so many twists and turns. Bojiu glanced at them. How's your coordination? Black belt in Taekwondo. Lin Feng was best at martial arts with his legs. Bojiu sized him up. Since you can't sing, you can dance. After you dance, you can even move your lips. Lin Feng. What the hell? What songs do youngsters like these days? Bojiu scrolled back and forth in the KTV song selection area. Coco and Feng Shang looked at each other. You're the youngest here. Bojiu paused for a moment before smiling. That seems to be the case. Most of the Supreme Alliance's fans were similar to her. There were many students. It was a parting occasion, so there was no need to be so unhappy. Bojiu slid open the chart and listened to the top 3 songs. In the end, she settled on the middle song. This one. Coco, Lin Feng, and even Feng Shang froze at that moment. Their expressions were hard to describe. This song. Yes, this one. Bojiu made the final decision. The other 3 looked like they had nothing left to live for. It was all thanks to Weibo this time. When Bojiu returned to the Qin family, it was still peaceful. But it was only peaceful. Bojiu walked into the house. Auntie Zhang, who came out with a cup of tea, pointed behind her with her chin and said in a low voice, "The young master is in the study." In this situation, Bojiu could only turn and walk towards the study. In the study. Qin Mo was nearing the end of the call. On the other end, Magician insisted on an answer. Boss, who exactly is this young Master Fu? He saved the entire ship single-handedly and knows how to make use of the surroundings to minimize the impact of the explosion. Who exactly is he? Do you really like him? Or are you attracted to his capabilities and want to recruit him? Someone could vaguely be heard saying, "Is there something wrong with your brain?" Boss's attitude clearly says that he likes her. I didn't expect the boss to be gay. If I had known earlier, I would have been more careful when I showered in the platoon. No, that's not right. If I had known the boss was gay, I would have been in a favorable position. Anyway, the boss is so handsome. No matter how I think about it, it's not a loss. Qin Mo allowed them to make a ruckus. In the end, he asked faintly, "Are you done?" 4 words. It was a solemn silence. You just have to remember to protect her family. As for other things, don't say anything. Even if Huang Guohua asks, there are some things I have to investigate. Alright, I'm hanging up, someone is coming in. Indeed, someone was coming. It was Bojo. She was feeling a little guilty, but even so, she maintained her lazy attitude. Brother M.O.T. She looked so obedient. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster and placed his phone on the table. He leaned back, his left hand still wrapped in bandages. Since when did the wall-hopping student rely on a cat to divert her attention? The almighty's sharp tongue was so artistic. How was she supposed to respond? What are you and Lin Feng doing? Qin Mo tapped the screen, probably because he had seen the message. Bojo sat down, her gaze deep. She still looked like a rich young master even though her sitting posture wasn't proper. We want to hold a farewell party. After hearing these 3 words, Qin Mo could almost guess the cause and effect. After a while, he opened his mouth. Which day? Bojo replied, tomorrow. Bojo assumed that was the end of the matter. But the next second, Qin Mo spoke again. Next time, if you want to go out, go through the front door. It won't be good if the grandpas in the courtyard see you when you climb the wall. What do you think? Bojo paused, feeling depressed again. Didn't he promise not to tell Brother Mo? She didn't expect him to be so passionate about gossip no matter how old he was. Come here. Qin Mo looked at the youngster's expression and smiled. Bojo arched a brow. She placed both hands on the table and leaned over. Qin Mo moved slightly and reached out, pressing the back of the youngster's head. It was a sweet kiss. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. The lights, the starry sky, and the reflection from the window landed in the study room. Everything seemed incomparably peaceful. It seemed that other than the sound of a heartbeat, nothing else could be heard. Even Madame Zhang, who was secretly observing, didn't enter again. The night grew darker. Even though both of them were in the Qin family's house. But they did live in 2 rooms. Ever since Bojo moved in, Qin Mo seemed to have an extra job, which was to tell a certain someone a bedtime story. Qin Mo had always thought that this kind of thing was only enjoyed by children. But it was obvious that the person sleeping on the bed wasn't very mature mentally. Qin Mo reached out and pushed the silver hair in front of the youngster's forehead away. His gaze deepened. Then he walked out of the room and went to the courtyard. Very soon, a military vehicle drove over from the other side. There was a swoosh. A person came down from the car. That person was wearing glasses. Although he was wearing a white coat, there was no way to link such a devilish-looking man with the word doctor. Boss, you asked me to come at this time. It's really strange. People who don't know might think that we have some unspeakable secret. Qin Mo glanced at him. He stuffed one hand into his pocket and stood tall. If you want me to get in the car, leave some space for me. The psychiatrist sized him up. In the end, he couldn't see anything from that noble and handsome face. He sat back and took out a fountain pen and a pile of notes on his lap. Today, just as he was about to speak, Qin Mo interrupted him. That's right, it's very important, so I won't tell you anything about her. You don't have to think of ways to make me fall asleep. After all, this is a little difficult for you. The psychiatrist gritted his teeth and kept the pen. Honestly, he really wanted to resign and coach the new recruits in the army. Why did he have to come to his young master to suffer? Then tell me what you want to tell me. The psychiatrist had already given up. But he didn't completely give up. After all, no matter what was said, it could reflect a person's psychological state. But the answer he got was definitely a rejection. All these years, his boss's reaction was basically the same every time. Chin Mo crossed his slender legs slightly. It was obvious that he was used to this. Sometimes, the psychiatrist would come to do psychological tests for him. I do have something that I want to hear your analysis of. The psychiatrist was about to write the word no, but after hearing Chin Mo's words, he suddenly straightened his body and almost dropped the fountain pen in his hand. Chin Mo glanced at him and reminded him faintly, "Be professional, don't let me see your shock." The psychiatrist tried his best to control his micro-expressions, but his voice still sounded a little excited. "What is it?" "It's about the thoughts of a high school student." The psychiatrist guessed for a long time but didn't expect such an answer. Was he kidding? This wasn't what he wanted to hear, okay? If a high school student still likes to listen to bedtime stories, why is that? Chin Mo's side profile didn't change at all. The psychiatrist spread his hands. "Isn't it easy to analyze? She can't forget her childhood and lacks a sense of security. This kind of person is a little complicated. It's not that she doesn't know anything, but she knows everything, but she has a pure land in her heart that she wants to keep. And it's very likely that her pure land is her childhood. In other words, the words childhood sweetheart are very important to her." Of course. The psychiatrist thought that this inference was very simple. Chin Mo didn't say anything else. He just looked out of the window. His deep eyes seemed to have deepened. His fringe fell, blocking his expression. He had already done this analysis. However, when this kind of analysis was said by someone else, he still subconsciously reached out and pulled open his collar. Just like that, he sat in the car seat, his posture a bit more unruly than usual, but the corners of his mouth hid all traces of a smile. That was why she kept wanting to leave. This time, she went overseas with the intention of never coming back. Chapter 1076. There's one more thing. Chin Mo glanced over. The psychiatrist adjusted his white coat and said righteously, "Boss, do I look like someone who specializes in dealing with teenage psychological problems?" "This time, it's me," Chin Mo replied calmly. The psychiatrist lifted his eyes, his interest piqued. "What?" "I don't know why images keep appearing in my head recently." Chin Mo looked at him, his tone slow. "Could it be because I like someone too much, causing me to think of the person when they were young?" The psychiatrist's hand that was holding the pen paused, but he didn't show it. He flipped open the notebook, writing as he said, "From a psychological perspective, if you like someone too much, you would indeed think of the person in all sorts of situations. There might even be things that you haven't done, but you would feel as though you have experienced them. Boss, you study psychology too, you should be clear about this." In reality, it wasn't just the person he liked, many people would have the same feeling as though they had thought of it before. Chin Mo retracted his gaze and pulled the car door to the left. With a swoosh, the car door opened. Just as the psychiatrist was about to ask more questions, Chin Mo had already alighted. The psychiatrist was helpless. He glanced at the incomplete form in front of him. It really wasn't suitable to hand it over to the higher-ups. But, if it was really like what Boss had said, would it mean that Boss would regain his lost memories? But regardless of whether it was the general or madam, they didn't want that memory to reappear. After all, no one would be able to forget that scene. Boss, who was covered in wounds, seemed to have lost his soul. It wasn't until he recovered from his illness and had a fever for 3 whole days that he lost some of his memories, that he returned to his current state. Selective amnesia. He must have suffered greatly for this to happen. Before they found out why Boss would feel pain, they wouldn't allow certain memories to trigger young master. After all, no one could guarantee what would happen. Since it was so painful, then they wouldn't do it. This was the decision they had made at that time. After all, if Boss had had a complete memory, he would have been accused of being hypnotized by a terrorist organization and would have faced a more serious interrogation. No one would have expected Boss to have selective amnesia. Just like when he was on a mission at the border, what exactly happened to him was still a mystery. The psychiatrist rubbed his temples. This was a huge matter and he had to report it to General Qin. This meant that he had to let Boss bring people to complete the mission. As the night passed, it began to rain outside the courtyard. Qin Emo strolled around, looking elegant and refined. Soon, someone walked over, raising a black umbrella. In the future, ask them to wait for young Master Zhou to fall asleep, Qin Emo replied indifferently. That person nodded and didn't say much. The young master's trip was basically filled with chills. He didn't know what had happened. Qin Emo didn't say anything else. From the conversation just now, the only thing Qin Emo was sure of was that the doctor was lying, and he was lying about his situation. Chapter 1077. The next morning, Bo Jiu left early. This time, she walked out of the main gate, using the excuse of walking the cat as an excuse to bring Princess along. Before she left, the old men who were out for a stroll greeted her. "Little friend, you're here again. You didn't climb over the wall this time. You did well the last time. He must be going back to get punished. Where are you going so early in the morning?" Bo Jiu experienced the enthusiasm of the old men in the courtyard. All of them were tough but still like old children. "I'm going out with Princess." Bo Jiu found a good excuse. She pulled down her jacket, revealing Princess's huge cat face. He was valiant and full of vigor and seriousness. Those who didn't know better would think that they were going to do something big. The old men at the side teased. "Does your brother know that you're walking the cat outside the courtyard?" Everyone thought he was Qin Chu's little brother. Bo Jiu replied calmly, "I know." She was happy that she finally didn't have to sneak out. At this moment, in the study room of the Qin family's house, the person who always followed Qin Emo appeared. "Young master, don't you need to follow young Master Zhou anymore?" "I don't need it here." Qin Emo used the knife and fork to cut the omelette in front of him, his voice calm. "She doesn't like to be restrained. Give her some freedom and she will know what she wants to do next." There was a double meaning in his words. The man glanced sideways at the book in his young master's hand. Sun Tzu's Art of War, retreat in order to advance. This was a good move. Bo Jiu was more relaxed now. After alighting from the taxi, she let Princess lie on her shoulder, letting him fend for himself. As a purebred cat that rarely left the military courtyard, Princess felt that such an outing was an insult to his bloodline. However, seeing that this strange kid had fed it dried fish, it reluctantly looked at him for a while longer. Coco and Feng Shang hadn't expected Bo Jiu to bring a cat. One wave of teasing, and another wave of teasing. In the end, there was music. Princess wore a huge pancake face, watching the few humans jumping around in front of him. He patted the big fellow that always made sounds. During lunch, it was finally quieter. The strange kid treated it well. After feeding it some dried fish, he picked up a lunchbox and started eating. Are humans so poor now? Eating boxed meals. The four of them did eat boxed lunches. The place he brought the princess to was also a studio for practicing Korean dance. People like us, can we form a group and officially debut? Coco said as he ate. He didn't forget to look at himself in the mirror. The more I look, the more handsome I look. I'm not going to look anymore. I'm afraid I'll lose myself in my own handsomeness. Feng Shang didn't say a word and hit the back of his head. Wake up. The two of them didn't use their mouths or their fists, they were just fooling around. Finally, he quietened down and glanced at Lin Feng, who was still trying to find his tone. Coco leaned against the huge mirror, his voice low. Is Supreme Alliance really going to be like this in the future? Feng Shang didn't say anything because he knew too well that all good things must come to an end. Some things couldn't be achieved just because you wanted them to. We're still here. Feng Shang's bad habit hadn't changed. Wait for everyone to come back. Coco slapped his long legs. You're right, I'm rich anyway. We'll wait here for them to come back. Both of them knew he was just comforting himself. Yun, who was overseas, and Lin Feng was going to start a company in the future. Their captain was gone. How could they go back just like that? Everyone probably understood this point, which was why they were especially serious during practice. 5 p.m., the four of them had officially graduated. From the rhythm to the repetitive movements and the proficiency with the lyrics, they were no longer the people of the past. Are you ready? Bojiu asked the three beside her. Lin Feng pointed at his eyes. Do I have to wear eyeliner? Stage makeup. Bojiu smiled devilishly. The lighting is dim, we'll take the car over. It'll start at 6 p.m. Coco tugged at his shirt. Am I too cute? Aren't you the type? Bojiu glanced at the lit-up phone screen. It's Feng Yi. The other three immediately shut their mouths, glancing up at themselves in the mirror. Hello. Bojiu stood up. Is the venue ready? All right, we're ready too, let's go. After hanging up the phone, the other three stood up together. Just then, Feng Yi said, from my perspective, it isn't high enough, it's lacking a highlight. Think about it, what highlight is there? Bojiu turned on the hands-free mode, allowing everyone to hear his words. Lin Feng fiddled with his hair. As long as I don't have to wear female clothes, I can find any highlight. However, Lin Feng didn't expect the youngster to laugh lightly. The young man chuckled and added, I'll wear it. 2 words. Lin Feng almost tilted his head. He must be dreaming. Was this kid crazy? He must have lost sleep for the past 2 nights, causing his hearing to be impaired. Voluntarily wearing female clothes, what was going on? Let me tell you, little spade, don't take a step back in order to advance. Don't think that if you sacrifice yourself, I'll sacrifice myself with you. I refuse to cross-dress in this life, Lin Feng said majestically. Coco and Feng Shang, who were standing at the side, finally managed to shut their mouths. After all, they were innocent people, unlike Lin Feng who had so many twists and turns. Now, there was only one thing left in their minds, and that was Spade Z, idol, was going to cross-dress. As the person in question, Bojiu didn't change much. She stuffed one hand into her pocket and used the other to pull Princess back into her arms. She smiled faintly as she walked out of the mirror. She had said that since she was going to leave, she had to leave openly. The other three glanced at each other, feeling as though the world was a little fantastical. The 4 of them stood tall, wearing the same uniform. When they walked out, they immediately attracted the attention of the crowd. Bojiu was still wearing a mask. Just as she was about to enter the nanny van, a figure flashed past. It was probably because they were near the subway and there were many small vendors around. That person looked very familiar. Bojiu stopped and glanced over. Little Spade, what are you looking at? Let's go. Coco patted Bojiu's shoulder. Get in the car first, I'm going to buy something. A clear voice came through the mask, sounding a little nasal. Coco didn't have anything else to say. He put on his earphones and started revising the lyrics. Bojiu walked towards the slightly hunched figure. The person hadn't seen her yet. Her hair was slightly white and there was a wooden drawer-like thing hanging in front of her. That was something all the vendors would come into contact with. There wasn't anything special on it, just a few cartons of cigarettes and a few bottles of mineral water. It was a pain to sell like this. Under the bright sun, they had to walk back and forth. They had to walk back and forth. If someone saw them and needed cigarettes and water, they would buy 1 or 2 boxes. It was convenient for people who had just left the subway. Your change. The person lowered her head, a smile on her face. She was in her 50s and the bracelet on her hand seemed to have been sold. There were only some things that Bojo couldn't identify. The person lifted her head. Her eyes lit up when she recognized Bojo, but she couldn't call out her name. She asked in surprise, "Child, why are you here?" If it hadn't been for this person, her daughter wouldn't have won the lawsuit. Hence, even though Bojo was wearing a mask, she could still recognize the youngster. Bojo was carrying a cat in her arms. Her eyes were on the boxes of cigarettes. She took out her wallet, wanting to buy some. The person reached out to stop her. "No, I'm not selling these to you. How old are you to smoke?" She changed her direction and passed Bojo a bottle of mineral water. "The weather is so hot, drink some water." Bojo took it but didn't open it. When she opened her mouth, her throat moved. "I remember your daughter has some royalties." "Oh, about that." The man grabbed his clothes as if it was difficult for him to speak. "In the end," he said, "you see, those children are following me around, working hard. I also have to spend money to fight the company. These few times, I also have to find people to prove the evidence. In the end, it's my own problem. I don't want others to say that I did it for money. That's why I insisted on holding on to this matter. Things are as they are, so..." Bojo interrupted her. "I understand, Auntie." The person smiled, wiping the sweat off her forehead. "In the end, I still have to thank you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't know what to do. You should know that I can't read a single word." Bojo reached out to hold the mineral water bottle. "Is your friend calling you?" The person pointed at Coco and the others. "Hurry up and go. You seem to have taken good care of yourself, don't tan your hands." Bojo looked at her face. "Joe, remember, you have to always speak up for the weak. The weak aren't those who say they are pitiful and cry in front of others after hurting others. The real weak aren't those who can't seek justice after being hurt." Bojo stood there, the sunlight piercing her eyes. She understood. It had been so many days. From the county to the provincial capital, and then from the provincial capital to Jiang City. She had fought 3 lawsuits and every one of them had dragged on. How much money and effort had she expended? How many of them didn't sleep and wished that they could die immediately to calm themselves down? Then, they would have to face a bunch of questions the next day. No one would care. In China, there was a strange phenomenon. If a person wanted justice, there would always be a heart-wrenching explanation. This person must have done it for money. Why was she so troublesome? Everything was over. Could she get over it? In their eyes, one sentence was the end of the matter. But it was the last straw that crushed their hearts. Even until now, there were still people who didn't mind stealing. No one would care. They didn't care about the lives of the people they had hurt. The truly weak would never make a sound. Because they wanted to seek justice in a dignified manner. Hence, even if they won the lawsuit, the mother would only ask for $1 of compensation. Because she knew that if she asked for more, people would say she did it for money. No matter how the public opinion changed. In the end, the other party would be clean. But in this industry, there were many people who copied the original work and used it to become popular. Then, they would turn around and accuse the original work. After being discovered, they would pretend that nothing had happened. Anyway, there were people who supported them. But the people who were really hurt had to have no desires. Wasn't it right to take back what was taken from them? Wasn't it right for them to seek justice for their loved ones who were taken from them? If they had to talk about compensation, how much compensation would it take to return to a mother and a daughter? But it was these people who made every piece of justice that should have come too late. Bojo watched as the slightly bowed figure walked further and further away. Her hand holding the water bottle was a little numb. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about reuniting with the Almighty. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about staying in Jiang City. But at this moment, these thoughts were burned by the sunlight. She wanted to be Z, return to where she should be. Do what she had to do. Swoosh. The car door was pulled shut. It interrupted her thoughts. Bojo sat in the front passenger seat and sent a message. Hoshino received it. It was a simple message, but it indicated her return. When Hoshino saw the message, he stopped playing the game. Because he knew. From today onwards, Z would be Z. She wouldn't be involved with young Master Fu anymore. Everything would return to normal. Bojo hit it so well that the people in the car didn't notice anything unusual. Or perhaps, everyone was focused on their own tasks. Besides, Bojo had been wearing her earphones ever since she boarded the car. It seemed like she was listening to music. Hence, no one paid attention to her. The nanny car followed the flow of traffic towards a technical school. Why did they choose this place for the farewell party? It was because there was an additional major in this technical school. Esports. In the future, Supreme Alliance's power would probably be chosen from here. The location was chosen by Feng Yi. Since it was a farewell party, it should be done with a bang. After all, Supreme Alliance had never been a team that kept a low profile. The situation had changed drastically in an instant. This was a gathering place for schools. Other than this technical school, there were number 1 middle school and number 2 middle school nearby. Those who studied this major were high schoolers. Everything had the authentic atmosphere of a school. It was a little like the welcoming party for new students at the start of school. The equipment was set up on the grass. There was a rack and a sound system. There were professionals doing sound tests. There were also many balloons hanging on the ground and a long buffet table filled with food. Every member's fan club president was arranging for them to enter. It was a spectacular scene. When some students passed by, their eyes were filled with envy. There was a metal fence. It was originally a place for people to play football, but now it was set up like this. Everyone wanted to watch it for a while. Who is coming? An event organized by a celebrity. They chose a technical school to organize it. That's impossible, right? I don't think so. I heard there are esports players coming. Chapter 1078. Strangely, the fans were all here. For members from Supreme Alliance weren't here. Many of them were looking for Spade Z but couldn't find her. Are we late? It can't be anything. There should be a traffic jam, let's wait. After all, it was different from the previous masquerade. This time, everyone didn't dress up exaggeratedly. It was just like a grand evening party in a school. But Feng Yi had replaced the host. As usual, he was dressed in a suit and looked like a smiling prince. He held the microphone in his hand and said, "There will be a special opening today." Just as he said this sentence, in the darkened area, all the lights lit up, shining on the corresponding balloons, adding an indescribable warmth. As for the opening, Feng Yi looked at the fans in front of him, then at Yunhu and Qin Mo, his lips curving into a smile. Let's give the stage to the 4 members who aren't here yet. What did he mean? It wasn't just the fans who weren't sure what was going on. Even Yun Hu and Uncle Ian, who were in the same team, couldn't understand. Chi Nemo stood in the middle, his bandaged hand in his trouser pocket, the other hand swirling the wine glass. When he heard Feng Yi's words, a glint flashed across his eyes, and he lifted his lids slightly to look up at Feng Yi. In that instant, all the surrounding lights were extinguished. Only the shattered stars were left in the middle of the stage. Swoosh! A beam of light fell, shining on the black piano. She saw a young man sitting there quietly. The young man's slender fingers were placed on the piano, and his handsome side profile exuded softness under the light. It was obvious that the youngster was dressed differently today, otherwise, she wouldn't have a belt around her waist and a headset. But at this moment, no one would pay attention to the youngster's attire. Because the next second, the melodious sound of the piano rang out. It was very light, making it easy for people to hum along. It was obvious that the music had been rearranged. Just when many people felt that the theme was very familiar. The sound of the piano rang out. The youngster stood up suddenly, taking large strides towards the center. Her silver fringe was pulled back by her hair, revealing her beautiful forehead. The sound of the music changed. It was the same theme, but at this moment, it was bright and cheerful. It was also at that moment that the other three people walked up from the left and right sides. Each of them was wearing the same combat uniform and had a black earpiece on their left ear. Even their wrists were tied with the same black silk scarf. All of them gathered together, and the scene was so handsome that it was a little out of control. As they appeared, everyone held their breath. What are they doing? Before anyone could finish their words, Feng Shang opened his mouth. His voice was clear as he danced, giving people a sense of obedience. At such a young age, I still don't know what love is, but I was defeated by your sweet smile. Most importantly, the others did the same thing. At this moment, Coco and Feng Shang would switch their positions, continuing to sing. Every day after class, different timbre, but equally pleasant to the ears. In addition, the four of them were singing and dancing at the same time. Chapter 1079. The expression on every single fan's face changed. Even the students who were sitting by the railing stood up at this moment. Some fans were so agitated that they didn't know what to do. They reached out to hold on to the people beside them. Some pulled out their phones. Most of them covered their mouths as they pressed the recording button. The stars shone brightly. Besides the black scarf, Bojio had something else on her wrist. Everyone had a glowing black wristband. As they danced, they looked even more handsome. Every single person who stuttered wouldn't stutter when they sang. This was probably common sense. Feng Shang's voice was completely unleashed at this moment. Even the fact that Lin Feng was out of tune wasn't a problem anymore. Because during the chorus, the four of them moved in unison. Bojio's voice appeared at this moment. I just want to give you my love. I still don't know if this is considered love. I want to share my happiness with you. I want to give you a shoulder when I'm sad. This is the first time I'm nervous for someone. They had rearranged the dance. Hence, when Bojio sang this sentence, she tilted her head and paused. She tilted her body slightly, a mischievous smile on her lips. Her silver hair fell down as she formed the shape of a heart with both of her hands. Then, she formed the shape of a 1. When Chi Nemo saw this scene, his hand that was swirling the wine glass froze. Feng Yi stood at the side, his head aching slightly. Couldn't they have given a heads up about such deliberate actions? Was Little Spade afraid that no one would know about the CP issue? Fortunately, the pause wasn't long. They were dancing after all. After Bojio finished singing, she retreated to the left. Lin Feng stood at the front. He formed the same heart shape, but his style was different from Bojio's. His handsome face was the best plus. His voice was accompanied by the harmony at the side. Many people couldn't help but sing along. They raised their hands and swayed their bodies lightly. The atmosphere was extremely high. I really want to give you my love. It's only been a few weeks. My mood is bad because you aren't around. A ray of warm light shines down. I can't help but look forward to it. Because of love. With the end of the last sentence, countless colorful balloons floated out from the stage. Only 4 people were left on the stage. Their chests rose and fell slightly, and they couldn't speak for the time being. Because they had just finished dancing, even their hair seemed lighter than usual, but they were smiling brightly. Bojio's devilish aura hadn't changed much. But compared to her devilish aura, after singing such an adorable song, she bent over and placed Princess on her shoulder, looking even cooler and more handsome. Sweat slid down the young man's forehead and landed on his chin. His silver hair was already a little wet from dancing, but it didn't affect him much. Instead, it added a sense of unruliness to him. The 4 of them looked at each other and said, "I'll give you the best love." Then, they bowed in unison. At that moment, the screams were uncontrollable. Some people even felt that it was a pity that the 4 of them didn't become stars. They were all fair and clean, but each had their own merits. How does it feel to listen to your favorite esports god sing? The live version of the handsome dance. It was mainly a heart gesture. Even if the heart wasn't for them, it was enough for everyone to cheer for a while. The passionate atmosphere couldn't be calmed down. Even Yun, who was in disbelief. After all, he was aware of Lin Feng's singing skills. But when he saw that person's side profile was covered in a thin layer of sweat, he smiled brightly, revealing his beautiful teeth as he walked towards him. Once again, Yunhu felt his heart beating wildly, even his blood vessels were getting heated. The repeated tremors made him unable to control himself. He reached out and grabbed Lin Feng's wrist. The moment Lin Feng came down from the stage, he hadn't even stabilized his breathing when he was dragged backstage by Yunhu. The so-called backstage was just a temporary place. But even if it was temporary, there was a door and a small changing room. Before Lin Feng could react, he was already pressed against the wall. "Are you an idiot?" Yunhu's voice sounded extremely deep. "What the hell?" Lin Feng was about to explode again. He admitted that his singing wasn't good, but he didn't have to be an idiot, right? Dressed like this, Yunhu continued. "And singing such a song." Lin Feng glared. "Wait a minute, what's wrong with what I'm wearing? Why do I look like I'm naked when I'm with you? F***ck, move aside." Yunhu didn't move. Lin Feng reached out to push him. But his hand was pulled back, followed by a turn and a kiss. No one could escape from such a kiss. It was as though he wanted to tear him apart and devour him. His thin lips were pried open, and he moved around inside, sucking heavily. A numbing sensation assaulted him. Since it was an enclosed environment, they could even hear the sound of kissing. Lin Feng even forgot to make a move. Anyone who was treated in such a way would have their mind go blank. His head was buzzing, and his thoughts were all in a mess. There was also an abnormal breathing sound. Yunhu was the one who ended the kiss. He seemed to have regained his rationality, forcefully pulling himself away from the sweet taste. He leaned his head against Lin Feng's left shoulder, his voice hoarse. "I like you so much that I'm about to explode. So, this is the last time. Treat it as a gift to send me off. It's really the last time." Lin Feng's eyes widened. Lin Feng didn't speak, his face blank. Only his slightly red lips showed his current state. Yunhu straightened his back. The 2 of them fell into silence. It was probably because of what happened the previous time. It still didn't pass. Hence, even now, they didn't know how to break the news. The youngster, who had been watching from start to end, noticed that the two of them weren't moving and the atmosphere seemed to be frozen. She had originally intended to guard the door, but when she glanced down at her watch, it was about time. She reached out and knocked on the wooden door of the fitting room, even though she was already inside. Lin Feng and Yunhu paused, turning towards the source of the sound. They didn't know if they should heave a sigh of relief or be annoyed. Why was Little Spade beside them? Bojo expressed that she wasn't going to take the blame. They had discussed beforehand that she would be wearing female clothing today. The moment Lin Feng met the youngster's gaze, he seemed to have thought of something. He opened his mouth, about to speak. Bojo was still hugging Princess, leaning against the wall, a faint smile on her face. Rather than the fitting room, you can find a car. After all, there isn't a third wheel in the car. Cough. Lin Feng decided not to speak. With the current situation, there was no way he could clear his name. Yunhu stuffed a hand into his pocket, his voice calm. It isn't what you think, we are just fooling around. Who would be fooling around with kissing? Bojo arched a brow. Yunhu walked over, leaving behind only one sentence. He is straight. Bojo didn't reply since she felt that the atmosphere between them wasn't the same as before. After Lin Feng heard Yunhu's explanation, he smiled. Yes, we are just fooling around. His voice was obviously much lower. Bojo didn't have time to ask. Lin Feng spoke again. Which set of female clothing are you going to wear? He was changing the topic. Bojo understood. She glanced back and forth between the two of them, feeling that something was wrong between them. When Yunhu heard this, he paused in his tracks as though there was something wrong with his ears. You're going to cross-dress? I am. Bojo walked over, twisting open a part that was covered. It was a pure black long dress that hung down, reaching her ankles. For some reason, Lin Feng felt that the dress looked a little familiar. But he didn't have time to think. Yunhu asked, "Does Captain know about your cross-dressing?" "No." Bojo smiled. "If I don't wear it, Senior Lin will have to." Was that the logic? When did he say that? Yunhu was still frowning. Lin Feng was already resisting. "Don't even think about making me wear female clothing again. That's why I will wear it." Bojo lifted the dress, her movements swift. "Even if you are leaving, you have to be handsome, don't you think so?" Lin Feng didn't understand why the definition of handsomeness was defined by cross-dressing. But that didn't stop him from supporting Little Spade's decision. He hadn't seen Little Spade in female clothing the previous time. This time, he had to see what Little Spade looked like. "Alright, I'm going to change. If Almighty Yun wants to continue with Senior Lin, you can find another place." Bojo smiled. Her words successfully made Lin Feng flush. Yunhu could only remain silent. They walked out of the changing room together. Coco ran over. When he saw the two of them, he arched a brow at Lin Feng. "What's wrong with your mouth?" "Mouth?" Lin Feng seemed to have realized something. He changed his lines. "It should be the hot pot in the afternoon and the spicy pot in the afterlife." Coco hugged his rabbit, muttering, "It wasn't that fresh during the dance. Does the chili have a delayed reaction?" Lin Feng couldn't let him continue thinking. "What are you doing here?" "I'm looking for Little Spade." "Is he wearing female clothing?" "I told the fans that we are going to have a big move later." Coco couldn't hide the excitement in his voice. Lin Feng wiped the sweat off his forehead. He finally managed to divert his attention. Little Spade has already changed. He locked the door from the inside and asked us to wait outside. "That's good." What do you think Captain's expression will be when he sees Little Spade in female clothing? Ha ha ha, I really want to see it. Yunhu turned and glanced at the tightly shut door. He didn't tell the two simple-minded fellows that their captain had seen Little Spade in female attire. But this time, Captain didn't seem to know about it. Chapter 1080. In the fitting room, the youngster bent over and took off her t-shirt. The reflection in the mirror was the white bandage wrapped around her chest. Since it was covered, the Z logo wasn't visible. But it was obvious that after the bandage was removed, her perky curves could be seen. Her elegant neck matched with her beautiful white collarbone, which slowly blossomed, giving off a kind of enchanting bewitchment. Bojiu glanced sideways at the collagen Lin Feng had provided. She smiled and threw it into the bag. Her left hand moved and she turned to buckle something behind her back. All he could see was a vast expanse of white. Once the long dress was on, Bojiu glanced up at the mirror. She placed the long curly hair on her head and used a black clip to secure it. The energetic pretty youngster instantly turned into a cold young lady with the demeanor of a queen. Bojiu held a silver electronic lighter in her hand. She lit a cigarette and took 2 puffs. Then she remembered that the Almighty had mentioned quitting smoking. She extinguished the cigarette lazily. She glanced at herself in the mirror. Dressing up was a piece of cake for her. She didn't need much makeup. She just needed a mascara to lift her eyelashes and a bright red lipstick. She glanced at the person in the mirror. She had the typical vibe of a witch. Princess frowned as he watched from the side. He looked at Bojiu cautiously. Meow, who could tell him what this strange youngster was up to today? Bojiu reached out and picked it up, hugging it in her arms. She wore a black dress that reached her ankles and carried a snow-white cat in her arms. Bojiu looked more like a bloodling girl from a manga. Outside the fitting room. After the dance, the other 3 had already picked up their glasses and started to drink. Even Lin Feng, who had disappeared to God knows where, lowered his head to avoid some people's gazes. The only one who didn't appear was Big Spade. The fans weren't the only ones looking for him. Qin Mo sat there with his long legs crossed. He tapped the wine glass with his fingers and looked at Coco. Where is she? Coco was still imagining his captain's reaction when he saw Little Spade in female clothing. He didn't expect his captain to suddenly ask him, so he was a little confused. Ever since you got off the stage, you haven't been eating or drinking. You've been staring at me. What are you looking at? Coco shuddered at the question. How could he forget that his captain had always been good at reading people's minds? What are you hiding from me? Qin Mo swirled his wine glass and took a sip. When he glanced over, his gaze was faint. Coco couldn't resist the pressure and was about to tell the truth. An uproar could be heard from the crowd on the left. Here it comes. Coco's eyes lit up. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the voice. Lin Feng was also watching. He was watching from a close distance because the person who had caused the commotion was already in front of him. At this moment, when Lin Feng saw the figure with fluttering long hair, he looked like he was about to collapse. He couldn't help but say, F***ck, why is it this person again? Captain will probably be acting weird again. If Captain lets Little Spade down again, it won't be right. Even though Lin Feng's memory wasn't good, he could still recognize this person. Chapter 1081. It had to be said that Lin Feng's gaze was hostile and it was very obvious. Furthermore, he had said those words. Yunhu stood at the side. He raised his right hand and held his forehead gently. He had thought that this fellow would go offline occasionally. But he hadn't expected him to go offline so badly. How many times had it been? But he still couldn't tell anything. In fact, Lin Feng did find the girl familiar, but he had never associated her with Spade. After all, the current Bojiu was clearly different from her short-haired self. When her fair fingers were placed on the cat's head, her silky black hair was scattered on both sides, and her porcelain-like shoulders were slightly exposed. Her makeup was extremely beautiful, which was why the person standing in front of her looked like a noble from a castle when she smiled. Bojiu heard Lin Feng's words. She had come to look for them. She smiled. From what you said, you seem to hate me. As long as you can tell. Lin Feng had a stubborn personality. He stuffed a hand into his pocket, looking arrogant as though he couldn't stand the sight of her. Bojiu arched a brow, a playful look in her eyes as she took a step forward. Lin Feng called out, "Don't come over, don't you know it's improper for men and women to touch each other?" Bojiu stilled, but in that instant, she lowered her body, still carrying Princess. She bent down, her side profile stunning, especially the faint smile on her face. "Senior Lin, if you continue to hide, I'm going to tell Coco and the rest about your kiss with Almighty Yun." Lin Feng stilled. Lin Feng was stunned for a moment. Then, his eyes widened. His clear eyes were filled with disbelief. How did it feel to be struck by lightning? How did it feel to be struck by lightning? That was how he felt right now. Lin Feng's mouth seemed to be stuttering, he couldn't even speak properly. "Xiao, Xiao." After stuttering for a long while, he said like a man, F***ck. "Why is it you? This isn't logical. F***ck, F***ck. Lin Feng's 3 consecutive curses were enough to explain his current mood. He could never have imagined that the girl he had always mentioned in front of Little Spade, the girl whom he suspected Captain liked, would be Little Spade herself. This wave was really awkward. Bojiu straightened, the smile still on her face. Many people looked over. It was probably because of Lin Feng's reaction. Everyone was curious about who the girl was. Why was she hugging the cat that Big Spade had been hugging? Until the man tilted his head, revealing the black diamond earring. Only then did some of the fans stop what they were doing. They didn't dare to think further. However, the air around them seemed to have frozen. Everyone covered their mouths. With such a huge commotion, Qin Mo would definitely look over. In the crowd, that person was wearing a long black dress. Her fingers were stroking the princess's head. Her eyes were black and beautiful. It was as if all the lights in the surroundings were reflected in her eyes. That person looked up uneasily. The 2 men's eyes met. Bojiu smiled faintly, her long hair flowing down, the mole at the corner of her eyes glistening. At that moment, there was only one sentence in Qin Mo's mind. Chapter 1082. What are you looking at? Yin Wuya was the last to arrive. His middle-aged man attire seemed out of place. He had a cigarette in his mouth as he followed Qin Mo's line of sight. It was rare to see Qin Mo like this. She hadn't expected to see a familiar face. The cigarette in her mouth loosened. She turned back to look at Qin Mo, only to see that his eyes were as deep as the waves of the sea, bottomless. Princess leaped down from her arms, circling towards Qin Mo. Qin Mo sat there, holding the white cat up. When he turned towards Bojiu, he said in a deep voice, "Come here." Bojiu smiled. She had to admit that the Almighty's expression had pleased her. She finally understood why the Almighty liked to see others shocked. Seeing his little secretary being shocked was also a very satisfying thing. Bojiu lifted her legs and walked over. Qin Mo stood up, lifting his black jacket and covering her head. Before she could react, Qin Mo stood up. She was forcefully pulled into someone's embrace. The next moment, the familiar scent of mint and tobacco entered her nose. It seeped in. The back of her neck was cupped, gently kneading and pressing. Her thin lips touched a slight coldness. Bojo stilled. It wasn't just Bojo. Everyone in the surroundings froze. Feng Yi only had one reaction. How was he going to answer to the media and fans? How dare Qin Mo kiss her in such an occasion? No one had expected Qin Mo to kiss her in such a manner. Even though he had covered her, everyone present knew what he was doing. His left hand was still wrapped in a white bandage. His handsome face was tilted. When he kissed her, the curve of his chin was stretched. His handsome posture made everyone's hearts race. The fans present had never imagined that there would be a day when their hearts would race when they saw someone kissing. But that was it. Their hearts were about to jump out of their chests when they saw the scene. It wasn't a kiss that could be easily moved away. Instead, he acted as if there was no one else around and announced in a domineering manner. It was as though he was using this method to tell everyone that the person in his arms was his. The moment their lips touched, Bojo hadn't expected it. After he ended the kiss, he looked at her. His ears were filled with chaotic screams and gasps of disbelief. Bojo reached out and held herself down. Her breathing was unstable, but she still looked devilish. She leaned over and kissed him again. The situation was somewhat out of control. After all, some fans couldn't accept it. Qin Mo knew there would be people who couldn't accept it. But he didn't need to care who he was with and who he kissed. Some of Spade Z's fans had already recognized her as their Spade Z. After all, some of them had already known the secret of Big Spade being a girl during the competition. However, when he saw it with his own eyes, his heart was still very different. The person who waved the mouse single-handedly completed countless first kills and showed off the entire audience. It really was a girl. And such a beautiful girl at that. And she and Almighty Qin were real. Perhaps it had always been true. Those interactions on Weibo, those ambiguous clues. She could still remember the pink flush that rose from the bottom of her heart when the bed photo incident happened. It wasn't their imagination. It could even be said that their imagination wasn't even a tenth of the two of them. When Spade Z's fans looked at Bojo, they smiled sincerely. But there were other fans. Some didn't think Bojo was a girl. They didn't recognize the person that Almighty Qin had kissed in public. When they realized that it might be Spade Z, everyone had a different expression. What exactly was going on? Were the two of them really gay? What was with Spade Z cross-dressing? It wasn't easy to control. Feng Yi had to step up as his manager. This was probably Supreme Alliance's style. He thought of many reasons to appease the fans, but he didn't fabricate any of them. Instead, he explained clearly, Big Spade gave everyone a surprise. He used cross-dressing to bid farewell to everyone. As for the relationship between the team members, it is as you can see. At this moment, he didn't seem to care about what the fans really wanted. Actually, it was clear that if they were just a couple, they might be cute. But if you were really gay, they might not continue to be cute. But no matter what. This was Supreme Alliance. The Supreme Alliance that had many problems. How did it feel to have a heart that was about to explode? It was so sweet that it was like honey. For the fans who liked this pair, it was simply sugar among sugar. To the other fans, they would rather not have attended this farewell party. Of course, most of them liked it. Because all the presidents of the fan club only said one sentence to those people. This is a farewell party, we might never see Supreme Alliance with such a lineup again. When they heard this sentence, the other group of fans quietened down. They lifted their eyes and looked over in the direction of the voice. The clothes they were wearing weren't uniform. It wasn't like when they were playing games, where they would look at the same uniform and feel their blood boil. There was Shui Yao Yao, Coco, Feng Shang, Yin Wuyao, Lin Feng, Yunhu, Spade Z, Almighty Qin. After today, Supreme Alliance would be 3 people short. The Feng Yun CP was about to break up. Almighty Qin's hand was badly injured and he might not be able to play games anymore. They seemed to have forgotten. What was their initial intention when they fell in love with these people? They wanted to see them play another game, even if it was just one game. There would always be that person, in countless nights, in your life, telling you that in this world, there were things that could be obtained with hard work. That person was Shui Yao Yao, who they had watched grow up. That person was Almighty Qin, who had turned the tide with his own strength. That person was the youngster who stood in front of the huge screen, his head slightly drooping because he had lost a game. No matter who they were with, it seemed to be their freedom. Especially when the 2 of them stood together, not afraid of anyone's gaze, their foreheads touching, a light smile at the corner of their lips. Some of the fans were relieved. They had never seen Almighty Qin smile like this, so gentle that it could melt all the ice and snow. He was simply looking at someone. Scorching, deep, and doting, all of it finally turned into him pulling that person into his arms. With a faint smile, he said, "Little hooligan." Bojo. Who kissed first? This was probably how love should be. It had nothing to do with gender. Chapter 1083. The situation was gradually under control. When it was about time, Feng Yi instructed the president of the fan club to guide the fans out of the venue. It was impossible for Bojo not to be photographed. After all, in such an environment, many things couldn't be avoided. Coupled with her cross-dressing appearance, it was truly breathtaking. The people who posted the photos were loyal Supreme Alliance fans. Basically, they were like this. Initially, when I saw Lin Feng's cross-dressing photo, I didn't think there would be a man more suited to cross-dressing than him. But now that I saw Big Spade, I realized what it meant by the pupil surpassing the master. She's so beautiful. Sob, sob, sob. Once such a photo was exposed, there would definitely be many people reposting it. The fans were interesting, tagging Lin Feng every time they reposted it. Gradually, the topic of discussion shifted from Spade Z being the only one cross-dressing to the fact that Supreme Alliance was probably the most cross-dressing team out of all the esports teams. Moreover, their outfits were outstanding. The other teams also reposted the photos of Spade Z cross-dressing. Xiangnan's Xiao Sanpang said directly, "What the F*** CK? Little Spade, tell me if you have an older or younger sister. If you do, tell me your contact details now." It was probably because of his words that she was roused up. Many experts in the esports industry followed suit. Their goal was to find Spade Z's older or younger sister as their girlfriend. Such discussions spread rapidly on the internet. The popularity of the reposts was obvious. There was another comment. "I have 2 goddesses now, one is Goddess Luo Luo and the other is Big Spade. My goddess, oh no, my almighty is really beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that." As the other party involved, Luo Luo replied and tagged Bojo. "Where did you buy the dress? Hurry and introduce me to the shop. In the future, you can wear this when we go shopping. No one will think you're a man." Someone immediately replied, for example, "My idol and goddess are going shopping together," and so on. Feng Yi didn't bother about it since it would be more natural to discuss in such a manner. Even if the media asked, he could reply normally, "It's a farewell party." He cross-dressed to bid farewell to his fans. He wouldn't say anything else. Some of the media knew about Lin Feng cross-dressing. Spade Z wouldn't find it strange anymore. In fact, even the members of Supreme Alliance didn't think too deeply about it. This could be seen from Lin Feng's performance. He sized her up, caressing his chin. Then he lifted his arm and placed it on her shoulder. I have to say, you're still the best when it comes to cross-dressing. I, Lin Feng, admit defeat. From now on, I'll give you the title of the prettiest girl. You're so beautiful, it's suitable. Bojiu arched a brow and was about to speak. Lin Feng heard a cold voice by his ear. You don't want your hand anymore. That kind of voice, even if it wasn't very close, would still make people feel pressured. Lin Feng's back stiffened. Why didn't anyone tell him that the captain was back? Qin Mo had something to deal with just now. After all, there were still some details that needed to be discussed on Feng Yi's side. Qin Mo didn't expect that someone would cause trouble for him after he left for a short while. Lin Feng's scalp turned numb. He gulped and quickly retracted his hand, trying his best to act as though nothing had happened. Qin Mo walked over, holding on to the youngster's wrist naturally. His handsome side profile was emotionless as he said, "Let's go." The other members of Supreme Alliance had already learned how to survive from the wave of kisses. They tried their best not to look at their captain and Little Spade when they were together. But, even so, the captain didn't have any intention of hiding it at all, holding hands at every turn. Coco and Feng Shang glanced at each other. They retracted their gaze in unison, pretending that they weren't looking at holding hands but at the sky. Other than Shui Yaoyao, everyone in the team felt that their captain had turned completely gay this time. Shui Yaoyao, who knew the entire truth, scratched her palm, a smile on her face. Her Highness Zhou dressed as a girl once and everyone was already in such a state. If Coco and Feng Shang found out that Her Highness Zhou was actually a girl, who knew how stunned they would be. When Qin Mo said, "Let's go," he was referring to everyone. After the farewell, there was a gathering for the team. This was good. Since it was made public, there was no need for him to have any scruples. Even though the members of Supreme Alliance hadn't felt that their captain had any worries in the past, at least he wouldn't act like he was flaunting his affection. This was probably because Little Spade was dressed as a girl. The two of them were just sitting there casually. One of Qin Mo's hands was placed on the back of Bojiu's chair while the other was pouring a glass of wine. There was an indescribable sense of intimacy. Lin Feng understood that it wouldn't be easy for him to have a brotherly chat with Little Spade. Hence, he took out his phone, lowering his head to type a message. "Tell me the truth. Have you already chased after Captain a long time ago?" Bojiu replied instantly with an emoticon of a soldier smoking. Lin Feng shook his head. Public morals are getting worse by the day. Just as she was about to reply, to solidify her position as a beauty, the Almighty snatched her phone away from her. There wasn't any reaction from Bojiu. Lin Feng lowered his head, wanting to bury his face into the bowl as he shoved the rice into his mouth. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster's reply before keeping his phone casually. "When did you woo me? Why didn't I know?" Bojiu choked, a serious expression on her face. "Brother Mo, it must be because you aren't sensitive in this aspect." "Is that so?" Qin Mo placed his chopsticks down, shifting his gaze over. "Perhaps you've wooed too many people, so I'm not as sensitive anymore." Bojiu. Should she admit defeat this time? She felt as though the Almighty wasn't in a good mood after scrolling through Weibo. Was it an illusion? Qin Mo wasn't in a bad mood, but when he looked at the person in front of him, he felt an indescribable urge to possess her. He wasn't willing to share her secret with anyone else, much less when she was dressed as a girl. At this moment, the Almighty didn't want to admit that he was jealous after reading the news about not caring about Bojiu's gender and wanting to marry her. This person originally belonged to him. Qin Mo's gaze deepened. When he turned to speak, his voice was so soft that only the two of them could hear. "In the future, don't dress like this outside. Bojo suddenly understood something, breaking into a smile. She held on to Qin Mo's hand under the table, smiling devilishly. No problem. This was the way to pacify a jealous little secretary. Qin Mo paused, following the direction of her hand. She was indeed worthy of her little gangster title. It was probably because of the good atmosphere. Coco took the opportunity to say, "The collagen sticker Lin Feng bought is really good. It looks so real. If I didn't know that it was Little Spade, would have thought that it was a girl from somewhere." "That depends on the person." Lin Feng smiled. "Little Spade, why don't you go to the washroom and remove everything that needs to be removed? We can let them study the artifact of cross-dressing, the collagen sticker." At this point, Shui Yaoyao's face was a little red. She basically understood what they were talking about and was worried that there would be other problems. After all, Her Highness Jiao still had that secret. No one expected it. Dressed in a long black dress, Bojo lifted her left hand, supporting the side of her face. She smiled and said, "I didn't use it." Didn't use it? What did she mean? Everyone had a different reaction. Qin Mo's reaction was probably the calmest. His hand paused for a moment before returning to his nonchalant self. On the other hand, Shui Yaoyao seemed to understand what Her Highness Jiao was trying to do. Her eyes shook violently. Only Feng Shang didn't understand, his face full of question marks. Yin Wuyao was leaning his head to light his cigarette. When he heard that, he turned to look at Bojo. Lin Feng's gaze moved down. He seemed to be thinking for a moment. Then, realization dawned on his face. "Did you buy a better disguise yourself?" Yun, who was sitting beside him. From a certain perspective, he didn't think that was Little Spade's intention. "No," Bojo spoke again. Her voice was neither soft nor heavy, carrying the unique quality of a youngster, clear and pleasant. "I didn't use anything." "You didn't use anything." At this moment, Lin Feng and Coco seemed to have realized something. The chopsticks in their hands fell onto the wooden table with a thud. Both of their expressions seemed to be in sync with each other. Nothing had been used. How could that place be round? The only explanation was, no, how was that possible? However, another voice rang out. This time, it went straight to the heart. "Let me reintroduce myself. Spade Z, gender female, preference male." Bojo's face was calm. "I didn't tell you previously due to some reasons. Now that the National League has ended, it's time to tell you this secret that I haven't told you all. It has to do with my family background. I have been dressing as a man since I was young." After she said those words, the entire private room in the restaurant went silent. Even the usually calm Yun, who lifted his lids in disbelief. Not to mention the trio who dropped their chopsticks on the table one after another. Coco and Feng Shang's mouths were wide open. Lin Feng's outstretched hand was petrified. It had only been 3 hours, but he had been struck twice by the heavenly thunder. Little Spade was a girl. He put his hand on her shoulder and called her brother. The good brother who was researching on how to turn a straight man gay, Apui, was actually a girl. F***ck, F***ck. Most importantly, he used the mindset of an experienced person to teach him how to pick up girls. Even though he had never done it before, wasn't that what straight men talked about? In that instant, Yin Wuyao had almost forgotten to smoke. After all, even he couldn't imagine that the youngster who had pulled him out of his slumber and told him to shock the esports world with a bang was a girl. He was the first person to see the young Jinrin operate. Nimble and ever-changing movements. A frightening presence. A beautiful and invincible kill. Hand speed, technique, thought process, ambush, and unpredictable attacking methods. The FC King of Zone C. Even now, that record was still in the archives and no one could break it. The person who made the professional players tremble in fear, the person who really changed the esports circle, was actually a girl. No one could have imagined it. If anyone else knew about this, the entire esports industry would probably explode. Feng Shang opened his mouth for a long time but still couldn't find his voice. His idol was a girl. He had always thought that the manliest person in his life was his idol, but it was a girl. Wait a minute, I am a little nervous. Feng Shang felt that the weather was too hot and he was showing signs of a heat stroke. Coco didn't want to say anything else, he bit down on his rabbit's ear. He remembered the first time he met Spade Z, she had been so cold in the game that she didn't even bother to look at him. At that time, he felt that this guy was really cool since he had a shocking number of fans. And, he had always thought that this guy was gay, which was why he kept pestering his captain. At this moment, he finally understood. No wonder people always said that young Master Fu liked guys. That was because she was a woman. Coco couldn't describe his feelings at this moment. He felt that he needed to calm down. After all, he had been beaten up by a girl in the game before, it was really annoying. But on second thought, he wasn't the only one who had been beaten up. If Xiao Sanpang and the others found out about this, they would probably be petrified. Yunhu reached for a wine glass and touched hers. To us, you will always be Spade Z, regardless of gender. Yes. Lin Feng slapped his thigh, wanting to put his hand on her shoulder out of habit. When he met Qin Mo's gaze, he straightened, his expression incomparably serious. But little Spade, you have to let me digest this fact. After all, it's really inappropriate for men and women to touch each other in the future. Yin Weiyao was still young after all. He held his glass and smiled. Cheers to our team having a second female member. I really didn't expect this, little captain. This glass of wine had to be drunk. Bo Jiu stood up, holding the wine glass in one hand. She was unprecedentedly serious, even her gaze was deep. This should be a toast to everyone. Thank you for giving me a chance to fight side by side, which I have never had before. Chapter 1084. At the start, when they had found out that the person was a girl, everyone's expression was so shocked that they seemed to have swallowed their keyboards. Hence, when Coco and Lin Feng glanced at Bo Jiu, the image of her roaming around in the wilderness, killing her opponents alone. She didn't have to worry about their finances at all. They didn't have to worry about not being able to win in the team battle. At the start, that person was like a shadow hidden among them, killing the moment she appeared. In the end, with a long spear, she jumped 3 times in a row, breaking the enemy's rhythm. If Supreme Alliance didn't have Big Spade, even if they had Captain, they wouldn't have won. When Captain had gone overseas for treatment, it was because of this person who had shouldered all the pressure, be it from the opponents or the fans, that Supreme Alliance hadn't been without a pillar. This was their vice-captain. This was the FC King of Zone C with beautiful positioning, skillful maneuvers, shocking hand speed, the one who left nothing behind wherever he went. No matter what, they couldn't forget that they had lost together, lowered their heads in disappointment, charged out of the encirclement together, revived from the revival match, and fought again. To fight side by side. Lin Feng was the first to touch Bo Jiu's wine glass. At this moment, gender didn't seem to matter much. Yin Weiyao was the second. As an uncle, he smiled faintly. To meet again in the future. Feng Shang didn't know how to speak, he had an adorable expression as he touched the glass. Perhaps everyone knew that this might be the Supreme Alliance's last reunion. Yun who was going overseas. The others had their own matters to attend to. Shui Yaoyao's eyes were red, but when everyone raised their glasses, she smiled. To meet again in the future. Coco and Yun-Hu followed. Chi-Nemo raised his glass. Chi-Nemo was the last to stand. His face was handsome, noble as ever, as though he was still wearing his exclusive Supreme Alliance uniform. His clothes fluttered in the wind, his aura released. To Supreme Alliance. To Supreme Alliance. It was just 3 simple words, but it caused ripples in everyone's eyes. Perhaps many years later, they would forget the number of matches they had won, the pain they had suffered because of a single loss. But they couldn't forget this feeling. They were a part of Supreme Alliance. It would always be so. They were destined to part on this day. After dinner, it was almost midnight. Yun-Hu and Lin Feng drank and hailed a cab back. However, it was still different from before. In the past, both of them would sit in the back seat. This time, one person sat in the front passenger seat while the other sat in the back seat. Lin Feng could hear Yun-Hu's phone ringing. He seemed to be sending a WeChat message to someone. He could vaguely hear that it was a boy on the other end. Perhaps because of the alcohol, Lin Feng leaned his head against the wall and didn't say a word. Without the members of the team, the interaction between the two of them was a little dry. Lin Feng also knew that his desire to speak gradually disappeared when he saw the other person holding the phone and talking to the other side of the phone. He guessed that it should be the boy from the other day. In that case, the two of them had basically confirmed their relationship. From the sounds of it, they were also discussing their lives abroad. Lin Feng tilted his head and looked out the window, as if he had put something down. Chapter 1085. In that case. He didn't have to keep thinking about other possibilities. Lin Feng lifted his hand to press down his fringe. He seemed to be smiling, but there was a hint of sadness in it. Yun-Hu probably realized that Lin Feng had been too quiet since they got in the car. He thought it was the side effect of his kiss and didn't know how to break the atmosphere in the car. Fortunately, there was a topic to talk about. I didn't expect Little Spade to be a girl. When Yun-Hu said this, he tilted his head. Lin Feng knew that according to Lin-Hu's personality, it was already very difficult for him to find a topic to talk about from someone else. In fact, it wasn't that troublesome. Since she had a boyfriend and was going overseas. No matter how much he thought about it, he really shouldn't have messed up his thoughts just because of a kiss. It was probably like what Yun-Hu had said. This was the last time. Even though Lin Feng had never been in a relationship before, he knew that the best way to start a new relationship was to bid farewell to his previous one. Although he didn't want to admit it. That kiss was probably Yun-Hu's farewell. After that, they were really just brothers. Lin Feng adjusted his emotions. When he looked up again, he was much more natural. I didn't expect Little Spade to be the one who appeared at the masquerade. I feel like my intelligence is being challenged. I want to tell Zhao Sanpang and the others about this and let them experience what it means to have their intelligence crushed. From today onwards, I am going to doubt my life. Once they returned to their previous state, the atmosphere in the car changed for the better. Yun-Hu chuckled lightly. Silly and sweet person, I never expected you to overthink things. Hey, what are you talking about? Do you want to fight? Lin Feng reached out and locked Yun-Hu's neck from behind. He didn't use much force. The corners of their mouths curled up. Lin Feng felt much more relaxed now. After thinking it through, everything wasn't so complicated. When they got out of the car, there was a clank under his feet. Yun-Hu was in front of him. He looked at him and was about to retract his hand. Lin Feng used the force to steady himself. He put his hand on Yun-Hu's shoulder. Let's go. Lin Feng used to do this often. He liked to put his arm around his friend's shoulders. Because of this, Yun-Hu had always wanted him to change this habit. because he didn't want to see this person being so close to others when they weren't together. Indeed, Lin Feng had changed. Old Jiang City's young master's style was vividly displayed on him. He had the spirit of not being able to get along with others. Believing his words, he could only put his arm around his best brother's shoulder. But ever since that day in the room when he saw Yunhu doing that to his photo, Lin Feng hadn't put his hand on Yunhu's shoulder like today. Over the past few days, Yunhu had been hoping that this person would return to how he used to be. He hoped that when he saw him, he wouldn't avert his gaze, and when he got close to him, his body would freeze for a moment. That was the last thing he wanted to see. That was why he found someone to act with him. He was afraid of his guard. But at that moment, Yunhu realized something. What he was most afraid of wasn't being on guard. He was afraid that things would really go according to what he thought, and that they would return to the way they were before and only treat him as a brother. Apart from being brothers, they no longer had any possibility. The scenery of the military compound didn't change. In the center of the room, there was also a model of a small fighter. There were specialized people standing guard. If they walked down this road, they would reach the Lin family's house. Yunhu knew that if he didn't say it today, he might never have the chance to say it again. Actually, your phone seems to be vibrating. Lin Feng interrupted him and glanced at his house. Alright, I'll go up first. As a person in love, don't be like Captain and Little Spade, torturing a single dog like me. Do your research overseas and come back when you have time. Perhaps when you come back, I'll be different from before. I might even have a girlfriend, but there's one thing that won't change. I'll probably always be as handsome as I am now. Yunhu watched as he smiled faintly. The words, actually, as long as you ask me to stay, I won't go overseas, seemed to be stuck in his throat. He probably wouldn't care if he was really in love. He would also understand that there would always be a banquet that wouldn't end. He could even say the words girlfriend so easily. Yunhu's fingers moved slightly. When he looked at Lin Feng again, he only said one word. All right. Good night. Lin Feng stuffed a hand into his trouser pocket and turned to walk in. Yunhu had never expected that to be the last time he would see Lin Feng in the courtyard. Because the next day, the Lin family's house had been emptied. At that time, his mother had laughed and asked him, "You didn't do a good job as a brother. You said that the two of you grew up together and had such a good relationship. You didn't even know the Lin family's recent movements. The Lin family probably won't be in politics anymore. Lin Feng has really done well this time. The new place he moved to is very close to the Lin family. I heard from your Auntie Lin that Lin Feng plans to start from the bottom. I'm afraid the next time you want to see him will be the day you leave." Yunhu didn't know how to describe his feelings at that time. When he pushed open the window, the opposite side had become completely empty. Even the calculator that was placed there was gone. It turned out that it was so easy for a person to disappear. Ever since he was young, he had been used to it. The moment he pushed open the window, he could see that person tugging on his slippers, ruffling his black hair and looking at him in a daze. At first, he had thought that he would have to adapt to these habits when he went overseas. But he had never expected things to turn out like this. He had always been thinking about going overseas. He really wasn't sure what had happened to the Lin family. Yunhu's first reaction was to make a call. At that moment, he really realized that things wouldn't be the way he had imagined with Lin Feng. As long as he turned back, that person would always be there. To put it bluntly, he was bullying that person for being soft-hearted. He felt that no matter how far he went, that person would always be there. The call went through. A voice came from the other side, accompanied by some noise. Hello, who? F***CK, this place is really hot. I'm out at the market, what's wrong? Are you busy? Yunhu asked. Where are you? I'll go and pick you up. The person on the other end paused for a moment. Then, he laughed. Hello, I'm really busy. I can't talk anymore. Lin Feng, come over here. Someone's voice came from the other side of the phone. Okay, I'm coming. Lin Feng didn't even have time to say goodbye before hanging up. Yunhu listened to the low voice that didn't belong to Lin Feng. That extremely magnetic voice made his fingers paused. When he looked at the phone that was hung up, Yunhu's expression was one of confusion that he had never seen before. He felt that he finally understood what it felt like to be replaced. Even if Lin Feng had concealed his identity to work for the Lin family. But that voice was very familiar. It was the most valuable headhunter that the Lin family had hired. That person probably didn't know Lin Feng's identity. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoken in such a tone. But that tone made Yunhu feel as though he was sitting on pins and needles. Everyone in this circle probably knew that that person was interested in boys. Perhaps Lin Feng himself would never understand how attractive he was to others. Yunhu didn't want to complicate things. He also knew that Lin Feng had just gone over. There wouldn't be anything between the two of them. Besides, the other party wouldn't be someone who would lay his hands on his subordinates. But not now. What about in the future? It wasn't just this person. After he went overseas, everyone seemed to have a chance to get close to that person. So what if he stopped at this time? That was what he thought, but Yunhu didn't give up. He continued to call. But this time, the other party didn't pick up the call and hung up. After about half an hour, he replied with a WeChat message, I'm still busy. There wasn't even a punctuation mark. Yunhu understood Lin Feng the most. Ever since he was young, he had never done anything against his will. If it was hot, he would probably try his best to find a place that wasn't hot. But this time, it wasn't the case. Yunhu didn't call again. Because he knew that any more would be a disturbance. Even though he had never thought that the word disturbance would be used on him and Lin Feng. That day, Yunhu stood outside the Lin family's door. He stood there from 8 in the morning until 9 in the morning. After that, he had thought about it countless times. If he had said that sentence, would things have been different? But until the end of the story, no one would know what the ending would be. The shadow of the tree shook and scattered, the complicated light hitting everyone's face. This was the only time Bojiu would wake up. When she woke up, she realized that she was still wearing the black dress and the Almighty's jacket was on her. She pressed down on her head and remembered that she had probably fallen asleep in the car without any secrets. Hadn't the Almighty woken her up? Bojiu crossed her fair legs, one hand supporting her chin. She frowned slightly as she thought about a serious question. How had the Almighty explained to Madame Zhang and the others? Why was she wearing female clothing when he was carrying her? What are you up to, sitting there alone? A magnetic voice came from the side of the door. It was Qin Imo. He was holding a tray with porridge, side dishes, and fried golden steamed buns on it. Bojiu straightened her back, a beautiful smile on her face. I just wanted to ask if Brother Imo saw Madame Zhang when he brought me in yesterday. No, Qin Imo replied faintly. Bojiu instantly relaxed. That's good, Madame Zhang wouldn't have to explain if she saw us. Indeed. Qin Imo sat by the side of the bed, pinching a lock of her black hair leisurely, his lips curved into a faint smile. But I met my mom. Chapter 1086. If she had to find a sentence to describe her feelings, it would be that she had met Madame Zhang. Why was she so unlucky? Of all people, she had to meet movie queenin. It was rare for Bojiu to remain expressionless for a long time. Her heart was in turmoil. That was probably what Chin Mo wanted to see. He leaned over, pinching her face. What's wrong? Are you frightened? Bo Jiu was still confused, trying to organize her thoughts. At the very least, she had to be more sincere in front of movie queenin. She thought for a long time about how she should ask. When she raised her head again, she saw that handsome face right in front of her, noble and elegant, with a hint of a smile on it. The Almighty's expression was obviously gloating. Even though it wasn't obvious, she wasn't blind. Bo Jiu arched a brow, starting the conversation from the Almighty's point of view. Brother Mo, didn't movie queenin ask you anything when you carried a girl home last night? Was there a need to ask after seeing you? Chin Mo pinched her face again. Bo Jiu. That wasn't a good reply. The Almighty hadn't said anything, returning the question back to her. What did movie queenin say? Fine, she chose to be more direct. She couldn't avoid the Almighty. Chin Mo watched her casually, his body inching closer. You really want to know? Of course. Chin Mo inched closer, his voice calm. Then show some sincerity. Sincerity. Bo Jiu paused. Chin Mo reached out and caressed her lips, his fingers caressing her lips. This was the scene Madame Zhang saw when she pushed the door open. The sunlight shone in, casting a faint layer of gold over the two equally beautiful people. Young master lifted her chin, about to kiss her but waiting for her to make the first move. The sound of cicadas faded. When Bo Jiu saw Madame Zhang, she straightened her back and smiled. She didn't feel awkward since her image as a gangster was already set. Hence, she called out lazily, Madame Zhang. Since movie queenin had already seen it, she wasn't afraid of being seen by Madame Zhang. When Madame Zhang heard the girl's voice, she turned to look at her face. The next moment, her eyes wavered. Isn't this young Master Zhou? She had originally thought that her young master had done something to let young Master Zhou down. But from the looks of it, that wasn't the case at all. More importantly, why was young Master Zhou like this? Auntie Zhang felt like her brain cells were running out. If it wasn't for the face in front of her, she wouldn't have imagined the girl in front of her to be her favorite young man. Madame Zhang turned towards Chin Mo, young master, Chin Mo, who was sitting by the side of the bed, spoke, his expression unchanged. Supreme Alliance had an event yesterday and one of the events was for this guy to dress up as a girl for fun. I see. The realization hit Madame Zhang but she still couldn't control her gaze. She sized Bo Jiu up and muttered to herself, you look so much like a girl. If young master didn't say anything, she would really suspect something. Auntie Zhang only had one thought. She took out her phone and said, Madam will definitely be shocked to see young Master Jiu like this. Crack. Chapter 1087. Chin Mo replied slowly, so what if I let you do it? Bo Jiu stilled. Did the Almighty know something? Was he testing her? She hadn't even made a move yet. How did the Almighty know her motive for going to America? Chin Mo arched a brow. Why? You didn't forget to kidnap me even in your dreams. Why aren't you speaking now? Did I say I wanted to kidnap you in my dreams? Bo Jiu retorted. Chin Mo stretched out his hand and patted her face gently. There was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. More than once. Last night, when I hugged you, you said it 3 times. I didn't expect you to have such a hobby. She had really let it slip in her sleep. It seemed like her plan hadn't been exposed. The current situation was far better than she had imagined. She hadn't met movie queenin yesterday, the Almighty had been setting her up. She didn't have to think about how to explain herself. But Madame Zhang was still listening. Hey, couldn't he save her some face? With that, Bojiu turned towards the direction where Madame Zhang had been standing. Only then did she realize that there was no one around. After taking the photos, Auntie Zhang saw that the two of them had something to talk about, so she took the photos and left excitedly. She didn't want to disturb the young master here. Which meant that they were the only ones left in the room. Since it was just the two of them. What else could she care about? Since the Almighty had requested for her to kidnap him, she could give it a try before heading over. The moment she thought about it, the real gangster appeared. You're really willing to let me kidnap you? Qin Mo watched her. Her excited expression didn't seem proper at all. You can give it a try. The intelligent Bojiu quickly realized this was an opportunity. With a nimble flip, she pressed down on Qin Mo's right shoulder and pushed him onto the bed. She didn't remove her wig, her silky long hair falling with her movements, sweeping across Qin Mo's face. Qin Mo glanced up, his bandaged hand hanging by the side of the bed. He watched as she pressed him down, his gaze moving downwards. Today, Bojiu was wearing a knitted black dress. When she did this, not only were her fair collarbones exposed, even her curves and long, snow-white legs were visible. Especially when he bent his long legs, he couldn't help but want to hold them in his hands. Qin Mo retracted his gaze, his eyes deepening by an inch. Something seemed to have reached a critical point. At this moment, Bojiu was still deep in thought about how to tie him up. By the time she reacted, the hand that was originally hanging by the side of the bed had already wrapped around her waist. His fingers slowly moved up, to her back and the back of her neck. Finally, his fingertips delved into her restlessly hot hair. Bojiu stopped abruptly. At that time, she could clearly feel the change in his breathing. Chapter 1088. Qin Mo brought his little friend to the airport. The old men were excited, following them to the airport with their dragon head crutches. They even asked Bojiu what she intended to do overseas. Bojiu took a moment. She couldn't possibly say that her main purpose was to kidnap the Almighty. Hence, she had to be more tactful. She pushed her sunglasses up and smiled faintly. I'm going to be an international superstar. Acting. The old men did not agree, and their expressions were all very serious. After retiring and staying in the compound, they had clearly become a group of old urchins. Why didn't you fix computers and walk cats? Why did you become an actor? Bojiu. His words made sense, she couldn't refute him. Another old man tapped his dragon head crutches, his aura strong. Old Wei, this little friend isn't fixing computers, he's playing games. I know, he's good at computers, right? Isn't it better to stay in the courtyard? There would be someone to help us move those water droplets. The one I'm raising will recognize this little friend. Qin Mo held on to his boarding pass, standing tall and slender, his lips lifted into a smile. Grandfather Wei, you must be joking. Do you lack someone to help you move your water droplets? Wasn't there someone standing in front of your door to take care of your plants? Old General Wei didn't wish to speak. He just liked the little friend next door who was giving him a cigarette while walking his cat. What was wrong with that? Qin Mo understood the old man's intentions, his smile didn't fade. He reached out and held onto her wrist, his voice calm. Don't worry, I'll bring this fellow back and continue to send you cigarettes secretly. But you have to take care of your health, it's better to smoke less. Cough. After all, he was an elder, and old General Wei still had to maintain his dignity. Go, remember your identity when you go abroad. Yes. This was probably the reason why Qin Mo was so likable. Even though he was cold and aloof, he hid his sharpness in front of his elders. He was humble and didn't seem cold at all. Instead, he was calm. Bojo stood at the side, thinking, Brother Mo, I'm bringing you back this time, not you. You're going to be in a daze. It was as if he could imagine the shock in the Almighty's eyes. Thinking of this, his thin lips curled into a smile. Blocked by the black mask, the youngster's handsome face was tilted sideways, and his tall nose could be seen, which was still very handsome and eye-catching. The two of them were equally eye-catching. They walked through the security checkpoint together and boarded the plane together. They were the focus of attention the whole time. When they entered the first-class cabin, the beautiful stewardess came over with a blanket. Only then did everything return to peace. Bojo was starting to feel drowsy. Chinemo shifted his shoulders, allowing her to lean on him. He held her hand with one hand and sent a message with the other. He was noble and inviolable. When the air stewardesses walked past them, they couldn't help but discuss. It was the last test takeoff. Chinemo turned off his phone. The plane took off, and after less than 14 hours, it landed in New York City on the Atlantic coast. As the world's largest economic center, this city directly affected the global financial, media, politics, entertainment, and fashion world. As long as you drive on the avenue, you can see the world-famous Statue of Liberty. This city was filled with modern European-style buildings. The roads were wide and straight, and limited-edition convertible sports cars could be seen everywhere. There were also many famous schools in the city. When Bojo and the others arrived, it was night time. A chauffeur came to fetch them, wearing white gloves. When he saw Chinemo, he greeted, "Young master." When she saw the Maserati parked by the roadside, Bojo was almost certain that the Almighty was here to receive him was the In family's overseas influence. That was the case. The Almighty was indeed a favored son of heaven. There was no need to talk about the Chin family, they were a classic example of an upright young man. The In family only had one maternal grandson. It was no wonder the Almighty hadn't been moved when she had used money to buy him when they had been young. It was a pain to be too rich when one wanted to woo a girl. Bojo opened the door and sat down. Chinemo sat beside her. The moment they entered the car, she received a call. It was Movie Queen and had arrived 2 days ago and was removing her makeup on the set. She looked elegant, but she couldn't hide her happiness. "You can't take Joe away, do you hear me?" "I won't, I'll send her over now." Chinmo's voice was calm. He listened for a few more words before hanging up. The chauffeur spoke up. From the way he drove, one could tell that he had undergone proper etiquette training. "Young Master Joe, have you ever been in New York before?" "No," Bojo replied calmly. But when she saw the familiar streets, a mischievous glint appeared in her eyes. Especially when she saw the 2 police cars pass by each other, the corners of her mouth curled up. She seemed to be smiling, but it didn't seem like a smile, bringing out Z's unique evil aura. That devilish aura was concealed by the neon lights that filled the sky. The chauffeur didn't notice anything amiss. Instead, he glanced at the youngster and smiled. "Young Master Joe, in front of you is the famous Times Square. Do you see the largest billboard? The people that appear on it are definitely international celebrities. Every year, when we welcome the new year, more than 500,000 people would gather here to count down. It's a grand occasion." When Bojo heard this, she reached out to caress the bridge of her nose. She couldn't tell him that she had fought with the Almighty here. That had been the first time they had fought. In front of the opera house, people had acted like they were in the movies. It was here that she had met her most feared opponent. But at that time, she hadn't known that the person who had almost destroyed her billboard was her pet. It was obvious that Chinmo's memories were here. His gaze deepened. He turned back, his voice slow. I thought that anyone who sees this place for the first time would be more or less shocked. I'm shocked too. Bojo stretched lazily. But I'm still jet-lagged and can't perform well. With that, she leaned into Chin Mo's arms, lying on his long legs. She smiled faintly. Sleep for a while more. Chin Mo allowed the youngster to lie down, not saying a word. On the other hand, the chauffeur's eyes widened. Fortunately, before his young master had arrived, he had heard many things. Otherwise, when he saw this scene, he would really wonder if he had seen a fake young master. The drive from the airport to the filming location took about 1.5 hours. Bojo carried a black backpack and jumped out of the car. She was still wearing a large black mask. The cold moonlight shone into her eyes, bringing out the best in this place. Once you're done, send me a message and I'll come fetch you. Chin Mo wound down the car window, his side profile handsome and elegant. Bojo replied, okay. Then, he strolled into the crowded Star Creation Plaza. At this moment, another figure walked out from the side of the sports car. She stood beside the car and called out, young master. Chin Mo glanced up and said, follow her and only show yourself when necessary. Yes. The silhouette didn't make a single sound as he walked. It was obvious that he had received specialized training. Chin Mo reached out and the car window rolled up. If he wanted to know what she was up to, he had to give her some freedom. Otherwise, it would only backfire. After all, a certain someone would never stay there quietly. Especially when you let your guard down, she would always take the opportunity to scratch you. He knew that feeling well. It wasn't painful, but it would always be there. Chin Mo knew that she had already started planning her escape route. If there were many guesses in the past, after coming here, a certain someone's behavior had proven one point. She wanted to do something. Chin Mo played with the silver cigarette lighter in his hand. He turned his head and lit a cigarette. His voice was still calm. Let's go to the old place first. I need more information about Z, yes, young master. The sleek black sports car drove into the bridge. It was at the biggest Star Creation base. Bojo was thinking as she walked. She might have to make some last-minute adjustments to her plan. It was simple. She thought of the Chin and family's power but neglected the Almighty's own power. Back then, he had almost caught her in the act. This meant that he had people here. Bojo lifted her head and looked up. She didn't know what she saw, but her eyes lit up. She thought she knew how she had managed to distract the attention of some people. She just needed a little modern technology and a little magic. Just as Bojo lifted her lids, a person walked over with a gloomy expression. A man with a gloomy face walked over with a dissatisfied expression. He didn't even notice if there was anyone in front of him. Or perhaps, even if he noticed it, he would push her away the moment he saw a yellow-skinned person. Go away, you little hindrance. He said these words in English. He was a local after all. No, he should be called a local celebrity. He was a classic international celebrity. The muscles on his arms were firm and he was well developed. He was strong and could fight. He was handsome with thin lips and a high nose bridge. He was a classic pretty boy here. He was also the third male lead in this movie. Since she wasn't prepared, the moment she was pushed, Bojo relied on her instinctive reflexes. She leaned to the side beautifully, her eyes cold. She didn't suffer any physical injuries. Bojo wanted to pick up her shoulder bag and continue walking. Unexpectedly, a voice came from the other side. It was a rare excitement. Joe. Joe. Bojo turned, stuffing a hand into her pocket. She arched a brow. Director. Joe, you're finally here. That's great. The Americans would hug people when they were happy, even if it was an international director. But her back was patted by a bare paw. Bojo felt slightly pressured. I'm happy to see you again. Where's movie queenin? She's filming the next scene and she's still trying to get the feeling. She did tell me that you would be coming, but I'm still surprised. When the director spoke in Mandarin, there was always a sense of awkwardness, but this was still considered good. It was also because of the director's hug and welcome. The busy staff around them stopped what they were doing. Their gaze landed on Bojo. Under the warm night lights, a slender figure stood there. A slender figure stood there with a lazy smile on his face. He had one hand in his pocket and a black bracelet on his exposed snow-white wrist. He had a head of silver hair and a pair of shiny black earrings. He was young, handsome, and full of evilness. Oh, this boy is really pretty. That pair of black eyes fits my fantasy of an Asian. But there aren't many Asians who would dye their hair this color. Shouldn't they all have black hair? This does fit the image of the mysterious hacker in the script. I don't think so. He looks so skinny, can he fight? I'm not sure. I heard that the director went to all the countries in Asia to find such a person. Why not go to Japan? At least they would be more obedient and cooperative. Listening to the discussions around him, the third male lead also spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but everyone could hear him. Huaxia's male actors are all weak chickens. Everyone knows this. I reckon that once there's a fight scene, this person will be shouting for a stunt double. You guys have to be merciful. Don't scare our Oriental dolls. What if they break them? With that, a burst of laughter came from the other side. That smile could be said to be a joke, but for some reason, it made people feel uncomfortable. Bojo held her shoulder bag with one hand, glancing over. The international director was still immersed in the excitement of Bojo's arrival. Besides, he had to remind the filming team not to make any mistakes. Hence, he didn't notice anything. On the other hand, the third male lead caught her gaze. He lifted the edges of his lips in a provocative manner as he mouthed, "Chinese pig." He spoke in English. With that, he turned and continued laughing with the people beside him. Bojo's gaze deepened, turning into ice. It seemed to have become a strange phenomenon in this industry. Every actor in China wanted to develop here because they could prove that they were a superstar. Because of this, some people would use Chinese actors to open up the Chinese film market. It was a simple logic. Some Chinese actors would advertise in China, saying that they would be acting in a certain blockbuster. But when the audience entered the cinema, they realized that they weren't actors at all, they were just passers-by. The more this was the case, the more people looked down on Chinese actors. Gradually, in this place where stars were created, there was a saying, Chinese actors are willing to play any role, whether it's to paint them beyond recognition or to have them accompany them throughout the entire process. As long as you arrange a role for them, they will definitely let you earn all the Chinese people's money. After all, movies nowadays do need Eastern elements for the audience to buy in. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.